A shadow had already flashed over here, rushing to the side, seeing Elder Luo sitting on the back of a desolate beast. Luo Yunxian, what are you doing? Why are you rushing over here alone? Yin Yanqing angrily rushed to Elder Luo's side. Elder Luo panted heavily, looked up at Yin Yanqing and said, I'm just killing enemies. Reckless and acting alone. Doing things willfully. When will you ever be considerate? Yin Yanqing's face was tense, showing a steely blue color. You're right. It was a bit reckless. The desolate beasts here are hard to kill. The desolate beast that was killed under Elder Luo's feet had started to twitch again. The breath soil crawling and pulling the beast's corpse, beginning to restore it. Yin Yanqing looked at Elder Luo with some surprise, thinking he would argue, but unexpectedly, the old man agreed with her. Looks like you've had a taste of the bitter pill. Rare indeed. Yin Yanqing snorted coldly. Whoosh! As they spoke, a giant red-haired palm slapped down towards them, and the two immediately fled to a distance, escaping the red-haired palm. The palm belonged to a gigantic gorilla entirely covered in crimson hair, standing on end like flaming spikes. The red-haired gorilla was several tens of meters tall with bulging muscles. Its back vibrated slightly, and the flaming red hair gradually shifted to its back, metamorphosing into a pair of wings. Whoosh! The gorilla flapped its wings, stirring up a fierce and hot wind, quickly catching up to the two. Then its red hair shook again, each strand suddenly falling, turning into blades flying towards them. Yin Yanqing immediately turned around, calmly watching the red-haired gorilla, her eyes flashing with a golden light, enveloping the oncoming red-haired blades in gold. The sharp red-haired blades moved extremely fast initially, but after passing through the golden light created by Yin Yanqing, they turned into sheets of paper amid turbulent waves. The red-haired gorilla was also enveloped by this golden light, and its entire body suddenly transformed as if liquefied, appearing as though the whole gorilla was formed from droplets of water. Boom! The massive red-haired gorilla exploded, falling to the ground as a puddle of liquid. Materialization ability. Yin Yanqing, a UR-grade awakener, possesses a formidable materialization ability, capable of manifesting anything imagined in her mind. As long as her power exceeds her opponent's, she can imagine them as a corpse within her created domain. But there were simply too many desolate beasts here. She had just defeated one when two more giant desolate beasts rushed in from both sides. Elder Luo immediately raised his hand, striking them both down. Nevertheless, his strength diminished, showing signs of exhaustion. We need to get out of here, Elder Luo panted. They charged forward immediately, but after a distance, realized there was still an endless sea of desolate beasts ahead. I can't find an exit. Yin Yanqing petrified a giant lion desolate beast with a wave of her hand, and then Elder Luo kicked it to fragments. The path Yin Yanqing took had disappeared. The formation here was extremely eerie, seemingly only allowing entry but no exit. Moreover, the desolate beasts that he had just liquidated and petrified were being reformed by the breath soil and charged once more. Yin Yanqing alone could hardly handle dozens of late-stage, heavenly connection desolate beasts. Elder Luo could only strike again, but his stamina was running low. Unable to repel the beasts, he was panting heavily, unable to endure the continuous battles. However, at this moment, 3 other voices echoed, and 3 shadows flashed from afar through the white fog. Luo, where are you? The voice was from Professor Gua. Yin Yanqing's face lit up with joy and immediately shouted, Over here! Professor Gua saw the situation and rushed over, landing beside Elder Luo. Upon looking closely, they were Professor Gua, Sun Heshuan, and Shang Tianxiong. Why are you 3 here? Elder Luo said sternly. Commander Shang said you went after the desolate beast alone. We were worried and came right over. Professor Gua said gravely. Luo, are you all right? Why act so recklessly? Sun Heshuan said with a stern face. Commander Luo, the hope of Jojo rests on you. Chasing desolate beasts alone is far too dangerous. And if something were to happen, who will defend Jojo against the desolate beasts? Shang Tianxiong also appeared very anxious, but seeing Elder Luo unharmed, he let out a sigh of relief. His arm had regrown. There were powerful medical awakeners on the battlefield. Losing an arm wasn't too serious. But without a period of recovery, the arm couldn't regain its former strength. I'm fine. But why are you here when you're injured? Elder Luo asked Shang Tianxiong. Professor Guo insisted on finding you, worrying for your safety, so I could only take them in the direction based on my impression. We veered off course, but fortunately, Professor Guo noticed the tracks left by the desolate beasts and corrected our path, bringing us here. Shang Tianxiong clutched his arm, his face still as pale as paper, and his breath looked very unstable. Elder Luo turned his head and asked, Guo, are you familiar with this place? I'm familiar with the desolate beasts. Their running patterns, attack angles, all the way here, Professor Guo said in a deep voice. Elder Luo nodded thoughtfully and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Sun Hushuan saw Elder Luo looking very exhausted, and asked, Luo, are you injured? Elder Luo panted heavily, shaking his head. It's not easy for these desolate beasts to injure me, but there seems to be a strange formation here, ensuring these desolate beasts don't die, and they become fiercer the more we fight. I've exhausted a lot of energy. Luckily you all arrived. Then follow me. I'll protect you. I know the way out, Professor Guo said. You know the way out? Elder Luo was somewhat surprised. Yes. I came here alone this morning to scout. I felt something unusual, so I specifically scouted the terrain here. Professor Guo nodded. Since you've found the exit, let's get out quickly. Yin Yanqing liquefied a beast that looked like a snake but wasn't, and then turned to shout at them. Boom! Boom! While they were talking, the desolate beasts in the distance were relentless, continuing to attack. Follow me this way. Professor Guo approached Elder Luo, and at this moment, countless invisible attacks whistled through the void ahead. These attacks couldn't be seen in detail but carried an extremely dangerous aura. Professor Guo immediately stepped forward, and a brown light glowed on his body. These lights rotated and enveloped everyone in different ways. Boom! All those invisible attacks landed on his defensive light, but a powerful counterforce surged from Professor Guo's body, reflecting all the incoming attacks back. Whoosh! Whoosh! The giant tentacle monster on the left lunged over, only to be shattered by this rebound force. Quick, this way! Professor Guo led everyone forward, relying on his powerful counterforce to withstand the desolate beasts, reflecting their attacks entirely back. The desolate beasts came wave after wave, and even if killed, the breath soil quickly regrouped them, and they fought more and more valiantly, becoming smarter and learning from experience, no longer so easily slain as before. Elder Luo looked exhausted, unable to fight anymore. The beasts were not as easy to kill now. However, with everyone's joint effort, they were barely able to hold off the beasts. Following Professor Guo, the desolate beasts seemed to become fewer, and everyone felt encouraged. The beasts are gone here. Commander Guo's path is the right one, Yin Yanqing said. Everyone let out a small sigh of relief. This way. Professor Guo stood closely beside Elder Luo, charging towards a place filled with blue mist ahead. But just then, a figure flashed from the left, shouting, Don't go there. There's danger. Elder Luo turned his head and saw it was Qian Qingba. Qian Qingba hurried over, shouting urgently, Professor Luo, get away from Guo Zhenghong. He's a traitor. He rushed over, pulling Elder Luo away from Professor Guo's side, and then stared intently at Professor Guo. Professor Guo frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? What traitor? Qian Qingba said coldly, still playing dumb? Do you really think I can't see through? See through what? If we don't leave now, what nonsense are you spouting? Professor Guo retorted. Yes, the priority is to leave quickly. Professor Guo knows the way out, we can't delay. Shang Tianxiong also said. The path led by Professor Guo is a dead end. Qian Qingba said solemnly. Dead end. Sun Hushuan and Shang Tianxiong were both slightly stunned. How could it be a dead end? My perception can't be wrong. It's right here. Professor Guo insisted. You're quite the actor. Do you really think I don't know? Qian Qingba looked at Professor Guo with a chilling gaze. What are you all talking about? Not leaving, what's with all the acting? Also, who are you? Yin Yanqing frowned and said, Who I am is not important, but we have a traitor among us. Qian Qingba said each word deliberately. Traitor! Sun Hushuan and Shang Tianxiong were both shocked, exchanging glances, while Professor Guo's expression appeared astonished. What kind of traitor exactly? Explain, Yin Yanqing demanded. This desolate beast attack has a purpose. There's a terrifying force behind it that wants to break through Juzhou, but they know with Professor Luo around, breaking through Juzhou is very difficult. So they sent a traitor to infiltrate Juzhou, waiting for an opportunity to assassinate Professor Luo. Qian Qingba explained. What? Shang Tianxiong was astonished, and even Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing turned pale. The reason Professor Luo came here is because the other side has been conducting guerrilla warfare, wearing down Professor Luo's energy. Professor Luo had no choice but to chase these beasts alone, trying to end this guerrilla war. But the other side laid an ambush here. Qian Qingba continued. Luo Yunxian, is this true? Yin Yanqing asked. Elder Luo was silent for a moment before nodding slightly. Such a big issue. Why didn't you ever say anything? Yin Yanqing asked. Qian Qingba snorted coldly. Because at the beginning, neither I nor Professor Luo could determine who the traitor was. All of you could have been. How could we tell you? Everyone looked at each other, unable to refute. Then how did you determine Professor Guo is the traitor? Sun Hushuan asked. Because he knows the way, Qian Qingba said. No one can get out of here except he knows the way out. Nonsense. I know the way because I came here earlier. After the fourth wave of beast tides was repelled, I sensed something unusual, came here, and made some pioneer marks. Professor Guo said sternly. Pioneer marks? What a great pioneer mark. Of course, you need to make marks here because the formation in the breath soil here is filled with your pioneer marks. Such marks are hard to detect unless you're very familiar with breath soil. Otherwise, they're impossible to find. Qian Qingba coldly stared at Professor Guo, saying slowly, But you calculated everything perfectly, yet you missed one point. Someone in Juzhou understands the breath soil formation. In the great desolate realm, breath soil might not be eye-catching, but in Edge Corner airspace it is actual currency. Qian Qingba comes from Edge Corner airspace and is very familiar with breath soil. Because of Xiang Beifei, he knew exactly how to deal with breath soil. He punched the ground fiercely, soil splashed, and the breath soil was pulled out by him. Spiritual power quickly surged, squeezing out a brown light from within. This is... Sun Hushuan looked at this brown light in shock. Yin Yanqing and Shang Tianxiong also reacted, looking at Professor Guo incredulously. This was Professor Guo's power. Everyone present was too familiar with Professor Guo's power because everyone respected Professor Guo very much. A martial artist who dedicated his whole life to guarding the walls. If not for Xiang Beifei 10 years ago, he would still be quietly unknown. They thought Professor Guo was a martial artist who considered guarding Juzhou his mission, but none of them expected they had all been wrong. Guo, why would you do this? So all those pretenses back then were false. Sun Hushuan seemed unable to accept this fact for a moment. But this is impossible. Professor Guo and Professor Luo are life and death friends. Shang Tianxiong was also unwilling to believe it. Qian Qingba said coldly, The closer a life and death friendship is, the more it indicates how high his ability to disguise is. Few people could fool Professor Luo, but an expert in the ancestral Dao realm of the Dao Palace isn't an ordinary person. The person sent by the Dao Palace to carry out this task, in Edge Corner airspace, is a genuine ancestral Dao realm earth god. Such a master stands at the pinnacle of the world, having lived for thousands of years, with extremely ruthless and treacherous schemes and methods. Everyone was looking at Professor Guo. They needed an answer from him. Professor Guo stood there. His expression seemed quite strange, just slightly frowning. Then he raised his head and looked at Elder Luo. Elder Luo was also looking at him. Their eyes met in mid-air, appearing somewhat complicated. but neither of them said a word. Old Gua, how do you explain yourself? Sun Hushuan asked loudly. Professor Gua retorted, what do I need to explain? So, you admit that this one. Yin Yanqing glanced at Qian Qingba, unaware of his identity. But since he stood by Elder Luo's side, she didn't ask further and continued, is he telling the truth? Did you really intend to kill Luo Yunxian? Professor Gua coldly stared at Qian Qingba and took a step forward. Whoosh! Accompanying his movement, the mist around them suddenly began to swirl, and the blue mist they were heading towards erupted with earth-shattering thunder, while the breath soil of the ground started to tremble. A powerful and oppressive aura surged forth from the blue mist. Swish! 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 Several powerful desolate beasts poked their heads and bodies out of the blue mist, each roaring loudly. A closer look revealed that these desolate beasts were no longer separate. Instead, a fine breath soil sand line connected them together. Weird tentacles, bewitching long tails, sharp claws and fangs, sharp barbs, and even parts of their bodies seemed to be disappearing, as if they were invisible. This seemed more like a giant desolate beast composed of various bizarre and powerful desolate beasts. What is this thing? Shang Tianxiong looked in shock at the desolate beast in front of him. If it was just a single desolate beast, he could handle it. But so many combined had become extremely terrifying. Not only him, but Qian Qingba and Yin Yanqing also grew serious. These desolate beasts were no longer fighting alone. When they combined, it was not a simple sum of their strengths. This powerful aura was enough to threaten each one of them. Boom! Boom! Before everyone could fully see the form of this giant desolate beast, a whooshing sound appeared to the left. A fire-lit red tentacle as thick as a barrel was crashing down on them. Watch out! Yin Yanqing shouted softly, immediately forming a golden light in front of them. This dazzling light shielded everyone, and when the flame-laden tentacle landed on the golden light, the tentacle began to be corroded by it. As Yin Yanqing attempted to liquefy the tentacle, the process had barely continued when the golden light she created suddenly started burning entirely. Right after, a sharp claw sliced through, shattering the golden light instantly. Go! Go! Yin Yanqing immediately waved her hand, leading everyone to retreat backwards. Wait, there's still old Gua. It's not confirmed that it's him, Sun Hushuan shouted. But when everyone turned to look at Professor Gua, they found that he was still standing there unscathed. The massive desolate beast body had avoided where he stood, not touching Professor Gua, even coiling around him as the center. As soon as Professor Gua raised his hand, all the desolate beasts swiftly swarmed over, overwhelming and crashing down on them. How could this be? These desolate beasts seemed to be following old Gua's commands. Sun Hushuan exclaimed in shock. Is he really a traitor? Shang Tianxiong looked in utter disbelief, unable to accept this fact. They initially just had doubts. But when the massive assembled desolate beasts bypassed Professor Gua and attacked them, all doubts turned into reality. Everyone was shocked, unable to believe that Professor Gua, who had always dedicated himself wholeheartedly to the defense of Zhuozhou's borders, was indeed the traitor intending to assassinate Elder Luo. All the things Professor Gua had done over the years lingered in their minds. He was very powerful, yet always refused to leave Zhuozhou's border, unwilling to work with the Alliance, and simply researched various methods to counter the desolate beasts while diligently teaching everyone. In outsiders' eyes, he dedicated his entire life to protecting Zhuozhou, a revered elder by all. But now thinking about it, it turns out it was all a lie. Old Gua, I truly misjudged you. Sun Hushuan angrily shouted at Professor Gua after slapping away a piercing blade that charged at them. He had known Professor Gua for many years, and discovering the truth was hard for him to accept. Professor Gua, how could it be Professor Gua? It's impossible. It's impossible. Shang Tianxiong's face was also full of resentment, even mixed with a hint of sorrow. Back then, he was also part of Liangzhou University, receiving care from Professor Gua, so his heart was tangled with emotions. But they could no longer see Professor Gua, as when those desolate beasts pressed over, they had already obscured his figure. Elder Luo looked sullenly in Professor Gua's direction, uttering not a word. His gaze didn't change, only remaining silent, with half of his face hidden in shadow. At this point, these powerful desolate beasts had pressed over, blocking all their escape routes. The 5 people present were extremely strong experts in Jojo, but facing so many desolate beasts, they were feeling more and more strained. Because the desolate beasts in front of them were unkillable. Boom! Boom! Everyone was using all their strength to fend off the attacks of these desolate beasts, which would shatter and then reform again, making it simply a nightmare. We can't go on like this, we'll exhaust ourselves. We must find a way out of this plight. Yin Yanqing shouted. There's only one way. Qian Qingba swept his sword across, slicing through a section of the desolate beasts, and then fixed his gaze on Professor Guo, who was moving within the beast horde, and said in a deep voice, "He's the center controlling all the desolate beasts. We must kill him." Everyone was astonished when they heard Qian Qingba's words. Kill Guo. Sun Hushuan bit his lip, struggling internally. I really can't bring myself to do it. Shang Tianxiong was also extremely hesitant. They all turned to look at Elder Luo. What to do next, especially whether to deal a fatal blow to Professor Guo. The decision seemed to rest entirely with Elder Luo in their eyes. After all, only Elder Luo was a close friend of Professor Guo. No one else could make this call. Elder Luo had just knocked back a desolate beast with an eagle head and retreated 2 steps. His chest rising and falling heavily, gasping for breath. He seemed to have exhausted his strength, with little energy left, his face growing increasingly pale. Elder Luo kept gasping. For a long time, nodding. Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing both sighed lightly. They knew how difficult it was for Elder Luo to make this decision. But trapped as they were, if they continued without killing Professor Guo controlling the desolate beasts, everyone would likely perish here. I'll attract the attention of these desolate beasts. You seized the opportunity to go, Qian Qingba commanded. He was the most powerful among them, with an ability to analyze the situation, knowing how to break through to Professor Guo's position under these circumstances. Yin Yanqing and Sun Hushuan did not oppose, having just witnessed Qian Qingba's strength. They acknowledged he indeed had this capability. Commander Shang, you and Elder Luo get behind us to cover, Sun Hushuan said. Be careful, Shang Tianxiong shouted. Qian Qingba and the others immediately rushed out. Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing flanked on the sides, helping Qian Qingba fend off the charging desolate beasts, while Shang Tianxiong and Elder Luo blasted away those approaching from behind. Whiz! Whiz! A 10,000-foot-long sword beam soared from the ground. Qian Qingba's long sword sliced through the desolate beasts trying to block, but after being cut, no blood splattered, only the breath-soiled dust flew about, imminently reforming. However, Qian Qingba's long sword began to spin, its blade forming a whirl that shredded the obstructive desolate beasts, carving out a void that quickly led to Professor Guo's standing position. Over there, Yin Yanqing and Sun Hushuan focused their attention on Professor Guo, and the desolate beasts from behind seemed to realize their intention, fiercely attacking them and trying to protect Guo in the center of the beast horde. Elder Luo slapped at another desolate beast, but this time he staggered, retreating several steps. Commander Luo, Shang Tianxiong hurriedly supported Elder Luo. I'm fine. Elder Luo turned his gaze to the front, focusing on Professor Guo. They could already see Professor Guo's silhouette, but at that moment, everyone found it very strange. Previously, Guo's figure was blocked by the desolate beasts. Hence, they couldn't see what he was doing. However, when Qian Qingba carved out a path, they saw Professor Guo enveloped in a brown glow, fiercely fighting the desolate beast horde around him. Yet these desolate beasts seemed to ignore him completely. No matter how Guo destroyed them, they did not harm a hair on him. Guo also couldn't destroy much, because his strength lay in defense, not attack. As long as the desolate beasts didn't attack him, he couldn't fight back, and his proactive strikes posed little threat to the beasts. He's fighting the beast horde? This was the first thought surfacing in everyone's mind. Yet something felt wrong. If Professor Guo could control the beasts, why was he attacking them? Just then, Qian Qingba suddenly realized something and shouted in a low voice, "Not good!" He immediately turned, looking towards Elder Luo. Thud! At the same time, a chilling gleam pierced through Elder Luo's chest. Elder Luo's body jolted violently. He slowly lowered his head and saw Shang Tianxiong's hand, like an iron claw, piercing through his body from the back, reaching out from the front. Bright red blood splattered through the air. In Shang Tianxiong's palm, there was still a beating heart. You! Elder Luo looked in astonishment at the heart being held by Shang Tianxiong. It was his heart, forcibly ripped out from his own body. With their power level, an attack piercing through the body was more than just losing a heart. The damage also came from the soul. Physical injuries could still be avoided, but if the soul were to be pierced, it would be a fatal wound for any martial artist. Professor Luo! Qian Qingba roared in a mix of shock and anger. His expression flustered, and immediately turned to rush towards Elder Luo. But Shang Tianxiong already grasped Elder Luo's body, flashing past, avoiding Qian Qingba's attack, and by then, the surrounding desolate beasts quickly gathered, surrounding Shang Tianxiong and protecting him. Swish! 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 The powerful desolate beast's tentacles repelled Qian Qingba, and even flung Yin Yanqing and Sun Hushuan aside. Shang Tianxiong landed on the head of a massive rhino, still holding Elder Luo's body in his hand. Elder Luo had already expended immense energy to deal with these desolate beasts, and in his weakened state, he wanted to resist, but his body had no strength left. Trying to kill the only true god of Jojo is really not easy. A hint of a cold smile appeared on Shang Tianxiong's face. You are the mole? Yin Yanqing, usually calm, showed a trace of panic, staring at Shang Tianxiong in anger and shock. What do you think? Shang Tianxiong sneered, rapidly channeling the breath soil into Elder Luo's body, completely restraining him, leaving no chance for him to escape. Let go of old Luo. Sun Hushuan roared in anger. Let him go? Ha ha ha. To kill the true god of Jojo, I laid out so many plans. Do you think I would let him go? Shang Tianxiong laughed maniacally. Elder Luo was the strongest martial artist in Jojo, powerful to an unimaginable degree. Even Shang Tianxiong in the ancestral Dao realm couldn't defeat him one-on-one. Elder Luo's power could precisely restrain all late-stage heavenly connection experts, without provoking the extermination by the heavenly Dao laws. Such power was too unique. Even Shang Tianxiong couldn't precisely control it. Shang Tianxiong knew the possibility of defeating Elder Luo in solo combat was too low, so he kept strategizing against him. To make Elder Luo lower his guard, he launched beast waves to target specific attacks on Jojo, using a scheme during the fourth wave to lead Professor Gua and Sun Hushuan to investigate the beast wave in the wastelands. During the beast wave attack, he deliberately did not let those desolate beasts kill Professor Gua and Sun Hushuan, turning instead on the others, even himself, to deal a deadly blow, so that if Elder Luo noticed anything amiss, he would point the finger at Professor Gua and Sun Hushuan. As for why Professor Gua could reach here, it was all under his guidance. When Professor Gua came here, he would reveal Professor Gua's strength, making everyone see Professor Gua as the traitor, aiming to kill him, focusing all attention on Professor Gua, leaving Elder Luo unprotected once alone. Everything was within Shang Tianxiong's plan. Quite a strategy you've got. Elder Luo's complexion grew increasingly pale, as the earlier exertion was too severe. His internal system supplies couldn't keep up, yet he kept circulating his spiritual power, trying to find an opportunity. But Shang Tianxiong had already noticed this. I will not give you a chance. Shang Tianxiong laughed loudly, having planned for so long. He didn't want to fail through carelessness at the last moment. Elder Luo was already at the end of his rope, needing precise execution for elimination. Elder Luo was still gathering strength, but the dust in Shang Tianxiong's palm swiftly enveloped him, then shook abruptly. Boom! Elder Luo's body exploded, transforming into a sky full of blood mist, dissipating along with his soul. No! Qian Qingbo roared in horror. Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing were also stunned. Everyone present stared incredulously at the mist of blood. Whether it was Yin Yanqing or Sun Hushuan, or even Qian Qingba, they all held their breath for a moment. That was Luo Yunxian, the strongest in Jojo. No one could surpass him in combat power. In everyone's eyes, as long as Elder Luo was there, Jojo was safe, and nothing could breach its defenses. He was the absolute true god of Jojo. But they never thought that even a true god could fall. Unforgivable! Qian Qingba roared in rage, recklessly charging towards Shang Tianxiong, slicing apart a long snake-like creature that was in his way with a slash of his sword, and rushed towards Shang Tianxiong. But Shang Tianxiong let out a cold laugh and launched a palm forward, which carried with it a violent breath soil. It gathered in front, continuously spinning, enveloping Qian Qingba's sword glow, with each granule of breath soil dissipating a bit of the sword's might. By the time Qian Qingba's attack got close, it had diminished into nothing. Wish! Shang Tianxiong countered with a punch, sending Qian Qingba flying in an instant. This doesn't seem like the power of a Juzhou martial artist, are you? From the human race of Edge Corner Airspace. Let me think, this level of force and attack power, suppressed at the late stage of immortality. Shang Tianxiong looked at Qian Qingba with some surprise. He himself was a master of ancestral Dao at the late stage from Edge Corner Airspace, unmatched in power and insight, and from a single exchange, he determined Qian Qingba's origins. Yet Shang Tianxiong immediately sneered again. No wonder you always stayed by Luo Yunqian's side. I should have guessed. At this moment, Professor Guo also transformed into a beam of light, landing in front of them, staring intently at Shang Tianxiong, with irrepressible fury in his eyes. Old Guo, about what just happened? Sun Hushuan gritted his teeth and said, Hit me, Professor Guo said sternly. Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing exchanged a glance, saying no more. Years of friendship. Often 2 words were enough to convey their meaning. Their bodies exuded intense killing intent, determined to kill Shang Tianxiong to avenge Elder Luo. Whoosh! Whoosh! Powerful beams of spiritual power glimmered from both of them, converging together. Yet their target was not Shang Tianxiong, but Professor Guo. Buzz! At the same time, a substantial aura rose from Professor Guo, with these spiritual powers spinning in different directions, forming a ripple, and Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing's attacks fell upon Professor Guo. These 2 distinct forces, absorbed and redirected by Professor Guo, revolved around him, his surrounding aura becoming increasingly violent. Then Professor Guo suddenly shook, sending out the strengthened forces. Utilizing his counterstrike ability, Professor Guo enhanced Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing's attacks to another level, and with seamless teamwork, they shredded the desolate beasts blocking their path and struck towards Shang Tianxiong. But Shang Tianxiong casually waved his hand, the breath soil quickly rotating ahead, forming a vortex, absorbing that countered power completely like a whale swallowing water. Shang Tianxiong navigated through the desolate beasts, as if advancing through an unguarded realm, appearing before them in the blink of an eye, reaching out towards the 3 of them. You are nowhere near Luo Yunxian. He could be considered the first of the heavenly connection realm. You are not. Luo Yunxian's strength was acknowledged by Shang Tianxiong, but without Luo Yunxian, these people were like insignificant soldiers in Shang Tianxiong's eyes. Now he was the number 1 in Juzhou. Yin Yanqing and Sun Hushuan were each intercepted by desolate beasts with tiger heads that wielded extremely powerful spiritual power attacks. Neither of them were awakeners with strong mental defenses. Not even Yin Yanqing, with her capability of manifestation, could directly shatter her opponent in the face of such attacks. Therefore, when Shang Tianxiong approached, they had no time to escape. Obediently die. Don't waste any more time. Shang Tianxiong let out a cold laugh. The breath soil rolled out, enveloping Yin Yanqing and Sun Hushuan, filled with intense killing intent that, once in contact, would be enough to kill them. But at that moment, the surrounding air suddenly stagnated. This stagnation was strange, as if the air could no longer flow, as if everything had stopped. Shang Tianxiong's breath soil could advance no further, and the desolate beasts could not bring down their attacks. What is this? Shang Tianxiong's expression changed, quickly searching around, then suddenly became alarmed, his brows furrowing. Illusion. Shang Tianxiong instantly reacted, his spiritual power rapidly circulating, and the scene in front as if turned into a massive curtain, with cracks appearing on its surface. Crash! Everything that was frozen shattered. Then Shang Tianxiong saw a massive fist descending from the sky towards him, unadorned, yet carrying an unstoppable impact force. Shang Tianxiong's pupils shrunk. This punch was terrifying. He dared not confront it directly. Whoosh! 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 Shang Tianxiong's figure immediately transformed into breath soil to retreat, but the force continued to lock onto him, leaving him no choice but to shout again, summoning all the giant desolate beasts around him to charge forward, to block the punch. Buzz! The gigantic desolate beast, assembled from breath soil, was struck by the fist, suddenly freezing in place, leaving all the desolate beasts unable to move. And then, boom! A deafening sound of explosion. Every part of the giant combination desolate beast, every corner, every arm, wing, and sharp horn, exploded entirely, turning into a sky full of breath soil, dust, and broken limbs. And this time, this gigantic desolate beast could no longer reassemble. Hud, hud, hud. Shang Tianxiong staggered back tens of meters before he regained his footing, then looked ahead with a gaze filled with shock and anger. A thin silhouette stood in midair. This figure appeared frail, yet the aura he exuded was like an insurmountable mountain, shielding all risks behind him. Shang Tianxiong's body suddenly tensed. Luo Yunxian. He was still alive. What? Surprised. Elder Luo retracted his fist, his expression cold. At this moment, there wasn't a trace of the previous exhaustion on him. Clearly composed and at ease, and the power within him remained deep and terrifying, as if capable of shattering everything with one punch. Old Luo. Sun Hushuan looked at the figure standing in front of him, stunned again, then exclaimed in surprise. Yin Yanqing and Qian Qingba, upon seeing Elder Luo unharmed, also breathed a sigh of relief in unison. Professor Guo's eyes flickered for a moment. He said nothing, but his expression also relaxed considerably. Yet inside, they were still very shaken, because just now that huge breath-soil combination desolate beast was extremely powerful, and the three of them couldn't completely destroy it. But unexpectedly, Elder Luo brought it down with just one punch? Then why run earlier? Was it intentional? How could you have survived? I clearly destroyed your spirit. Could it be spiritual power? No, definitely not spiritual power. I calculated your spiritual power. Shang Tianxiong couldn't help but be shocked inside, knowing that Luo Yunxian had very powerful spiritual power and attack capabilities. So he considered everything, even when capturing Luo Yunxian, specifically verifying the opponent's spirit, 100% sure that he attacked his spirit. Spiritual power can disguise anything, but not a spirit, because a spirit is a very special existence, the fundamental of all races. To distinguish whether it is a spiritual illusion or a real person, one only needs to rely on the spirit to determine. As an ancestral Tao realm Shang Tianxiong, he should not have been fooled. What Shang Tianxiong couldn't understand was why, after he confirmed killing Luo Yunxian's spirit, the opponent was still alive. Elder Luo slowly lifted his eyelids and said, "You can calculate my spiritual power, but don't you think I can calculate that you've calculated?" He snorted lightly. Yet in Elder Luo's mind appeared that careless, foolish disciple of his. To protect his master, that foolish boy didn't just send Qian Qingba back to warn him. He also painstakingly left him with many contingency plans. Xiang Beifei wasn't sure who the spy was, but he knew that Elder Luo couldn't rely on spiritual power alone to fool the Dao Palace spy. After all, the opponent was an ancestral Dao realm master with sharp vision. His spiritual power couldn't fool them, and Elder Luo would be caught off guard. So he specially created something called the Spirit Substitute, crafted by extracting a spirit from a Dao Palace Elder, attaching the spirit to Yin-Yang source energy, disguising it as Elder Luo. Yin-Yang source energy is very strong, able to disguise any aura, can be used as a substitute at crucial moments to draw out the spy. In other words, the person killed by Shang Tianxiong just now was an unfortunate one from Dao Palace. The real Elder Luo had always been hidden in the shadows, controlling this substitute. No matter how shrewd Shang Tianxiong was, no matter his experience and perception reaching ancestral Dao realm levels, he couldn't see through the disguise of Yin-Yang source energy. Shang Tianxiong did indeed rip apart the opponent's spirit when he attacked, and he repeatedly confirmed it was a spirit before daring to make a move, ensuring it all goes perfectly. But whether that spirit was Elder Luo's or not is another matter entirely. Shang Tianxiong said gloomily, "So, you suspected me all along? If I had to pinpoint a spy, besides you, I can't think of anyone else." Elder Luo said, "Where did you start suspecting me?" Shang Tianxiong didn't understand where he had slipped up. He had been lurking in Zhuozhou for so many years, handling everything flawlessly. Even before finding out who Wu Feng was, he chose to stand on Zhuozhou's side, helping to resist various beast tides. He really couldn't figure out his flaw. Elder Luo raised an eyebrow. In fact, when Xiang Beifei informed him about the Dao Palace sending spies, he began contemplating who was most likely to be that spy. This wasn't an easy task because the information Xiang Beifei had gathered was too vague, and as his trusted people, the range was still wide. Initially, he suspected Professor Gua and Sun Hushuan, even Yin Yanqing, but when he discovered that everyone was seriously injured, and both Old Gua and Old Sun escaped unharmed from the hands of desolate beasts, he understood that these two close friends of his were definitely not the spies. It was merely a deliberate confusion tactic from the opponent, wanting him to suspect these two. Shang Tianxiong was very shrewd, and even when Elder Luo went alone to chase into the desolate realm, he gathered Professor Gua and Sun Hushuan, then pursued together, even deliberately leading them the wrong way, acting as if he was an unaware outsider, relying on Professor Gua to find Elder Luo. This reduced his suspicion even further. But Shang Tianxiong calculated everyone except for one person. Xiang Beifei. Everyone thought Luo Yunxian, the true god of Zhuozhou, was strongest in his combat prowess, but few knew that if he wished, he could definitely be the smartest person in Zhuozhou. It's because he could completely allocate his leisure points to intelligence and analytical abilities. When Elder Luo identified the spies, he didn't deduce their identity through simple fragments of existing clues. Rather, he recalled Xiang Beifei's capabilities. Though Xiang Beifei didn't specify who was most likely the spy, when Elder Luo arrived at Liangzhou to assist Shang Tianxiong, seeing the injured Shang Tianxiong, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and thought of Xiang Beifei's related abilities. In the past, Xiang Beifei made all sorts of trouble in Zhuozhou, using his N-level system to beat various geniuses, causing quite the stir. At the time, Elder Luo had always been speculating about what Xiang Beifei's system actually was. Later, he noticed Xiang Beifei's strength improved rapidly, but every time he was about to break through to the next major realm, he would be clueless, then come to inquire with joy, giving Elder Luo a vague idea. Xiang Beifei didn't know how to break through to the meridian opening stage, didn't know how to break through to the god refining stage, didn't know how to break through to the orifice transforming stage. At that time, relying on his powerful analytical abilities, Elder Luo deduced Xiang Beifei's true ability. This little rascal didn't have a system himself but could control other systems. Among the many trusted by Elder Luo, whether it was Professor Gua, Sun Hushuan, or Yin Yanqing, Yi Changfeng, Yu Qixin, Ren Zhanghai, Xiang Beifei had met them all. Their cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds these years because Xiang Beifei deliberately had Helian Zhang bring back methods to enhance system power. Xiang Beifei's control over systems was incredibly powerful, capable of manipulating various systems, and he had interfaced with all of these people's systems. In other words, the person whose system wasn't manipulated by Xiang Beifei had the greatest suspicion. The information brought to Elder Luo by Xiang Beifei was that other races in the Edge Corner airspace didn't have systems. If Xiang Beifei had met this person before, he could immediately tell whether they were from the Zhuozhou continent. And of all these people, only Shang Tianxiong hadn't been seen by Xiang Beifei. Shang Tianxiong was originally an N-level powerhouse and was the first N-level student recruited by Liangzhou University, taking 4 years to get admitted to Liang University, and made his way through body cultivation, revered by all. Logically, after Xiang Beifei also entered Liangzhou University, as the then provincial governor of Liangzhou, Shang Tianxiong should have met this other N-level student, regardless of whether it was to acquaint themselves or to jointly inspire all N-level awakeners. It would have been a normal occurrence for two of the most famous N-level awakeners in Juzhou to meet. But Shang Tianxiong never did this. This wouldn't be a big deal, as there was no rule mandating their meeting, but if you were to look for a spy hiding in Juzhou for over 20 years, in Elder Luo's eyes, it had to be that person Xiang Beifei never met. Because of Xiang Beifei's innate ability to automatically filter specific suspects. Ever since his student days, Shang Tianxiong would often leave Juzhou to enter the desolate wilderness beyond the domain to fight beasts and temper himself. During the time when Xiang Beifei was rising to prominence, he always used the excuse of needing to train arduously to stay in those wild lands, and he never returned. Typically, a body cultivation martial artist would spend several months to a year in those wild lands training. This was perfectly normal, and no one thought too much about why two N-level powerhouses did not meet. However, after Elder Luo linked it to matters related to Xiang Beifei's grandfather, he understood why Shang Tianxiong avoided meeting Xiang Beifei. It was because of Wu Feng. At the N-level, Xiang Beifei was far too conspicuous, and in Shang Tianxiong's view, someone like that would inevitably attract Wu Feng's attention. At that time, Shang Tianxiong was unable to determine who Wu Feng was within Juzhou. This was the only person, aside from Elder Luo, he truly feared, so he would not reveal himself to interact with Xiang Beifei. Because he believed Wu Feng might always be watching out for Xiang Beifei, going to find Xiang Beifei would be like walking into a trap. Thus, when Xiang Beifei was beating up various talents across Juzhou, Shang Tianxiong chose to keep a low profile and avoid suspicion, not interacting with Xiang Beifei and thereby avoiding being targeted by Wu Feng. This was precisely Shang Tianxiong's wisest decision, and because of this caution, he inadvertently managed to stay hidden for 10 more years. If back then he had let curiosity drive him to meet Xiang Beifei, he wouldn't have been discovered by Wu Feng, but rather by Xiang Beifei. In that case, none of the current events would have transpired. As everyone knew, those ghost mustache of remnant visage infiltrated Juzhou disguised as people, and they were all rooted out due to Xiang Beifei's knowledge of the system, something Elder Luo was aware of. If Shang Tianxiong had met Xiang Beifei, he would have had nowhere to hide. In Elder Luo's view, Shang Tianxiong either didn't have a system, or his system was similar to those ghost mustache of remnant visage. With a population of over 1 billion on the Juzhou continent, many people had never met Xiang Beifei, including Shang Tianxiong. Shang Tianxiong guarded his whereabouts well, using the excuse of body cultivation needing intense training to stay in the desolate borderlands. In truth, he spent those 2 years marking his trail. It was only when Elder Luo saw Shang Tianxiong's severed arm earlier that he realized this. But Shang Tianxiong was far too cautious, with no evidence from Elder Luo's side, and without possessing Xiang Beifei's extraordinary abilities. That's why he decided to venture alone here to seek out desolate beasts. If Shang Tianxiong showed up, then chances were high that he was a spy. Rather than saying everything was part of Shang Tianxiong's plan, it would be more accurate to say everything was within Elder Luo's control. Elder Luo stood beside Professor Gua and said, "Old Gua, apologies for earlier." Professor Gua shook his head slightly. "Everyone might suspect me, but I know you wouldn't." The depth of the relationship between him and Elder Luo was profound. Although they often argued, even quarreled over who would teach Xiang Beifei back in the day, they understood each other all too well. Professor Gua knew he was innocent, and the thing he did or did not do, Luo Yunxian knew best. Even if kept in the dark or under orders from Luo Yunxian for Sun Hushuan and the others to act against him, he believed there was a reason for Luo Yunxian's actions. They were old friends who could entrust their lives to one another. Elder Luo chuckled, knowing that old Guo wouldn't mind. He then turned his gaze back to Shang Tianxiong. Or rather, Dao Palace Elder Wu Yiming. You've been hidden in Juzhou for over 20 years. Did you kill him back when Shang Tianxiong was still in the god refining period? Elder Luo asked. You've investigated thoroughly, Wu Yiming replied coldly. Shang Tianxiong himself was an N-level awakener, but he was certainly not the standout among peers like Xiang Beifei. On the contrary, it took him 4 years to get into college, 7 years to graduate, 10 years to break through to the meridian opening period, 30 years in the god refining period. Shang Tianxiong was someone who got pummeled by peers. It wasn't until over 20 years ago, when Shang Tianxiong ventured into the desolate domain to hunt and train, did he accidentally encounter the Dao Palace spy. That was when he was harmed by Dao Palace's Wu Yiming and had his body taken over. Then tell me, how did you discover me? Wu Yiming was still very unwilling, being a master of the ancestral Dao realm, immensely powerful and meticulous, having been hidden for over 20 years without once slipping up, even charging at the forefront every time a beast tide occurred. This was to fully blend into Jojo, preparing to take Jojo humankind by surprise in a future grand assault. He was very confident in his disguise abilities, but being rooted out by a mere ordinary human, a human only in the heavenly connection realm, was sheer humiliation to him. I don't need to explain anything to a dead man. Elder Luo had no intention of explaining. He certainly wouldn't reveal his disciple's abilities. The reason for luring the spy into the wilderness today, far from Jojo's defensive line, was to strike freely, without threatening other martial artists on the frontier. The area here was vast, allowing free movement. Wu Yiming squinted his eyes, sneering, "Do you really believe you can kill me?" Elder Luo did not speak. He just took a step forward. Swish! His speed was incredibly terrifying. Just a single step and his figure abruptly appeared before Wu Yiming, startling Wu Yiming, whose sharp instincts and speed couldn't keep up with his opponent at this moment. Bam! Elder Luo swung his fist, directly smashing into Wu Yiming's nose. Wu Yiming was instantly sent flying backward, but before he could go far, another punch landed on his back. Just as he wanted to turn his head, his eye socket was hammered, sinking inwards, his body almost unable to bear it, and his flesh shattered instantly. Bam! 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 Before even a single breath passed, Wu Yiming had taken over 100 punches. The terrifying force left him no time to react. He was like a sandbag, brutally battered by absolute speed and power. This inflicted him with immense humiliation. He was, after all, a master of the ancestral Dao realm, standing at the pinnacle of existence in this world, able to destroy a race with a wave of his hand. Yet now, he was being struck down by a mere human at the heavenly connection realm without power to retaliate. How could his pride tolerate this? Wu Yiming forcibly endured the excruciating pain, then began gathering power, concentrating all his strength into his right hand. His right hand flickered with dense breath soil, containing the most formidable force he could unleash at the late stage of heavenly connection. This was a fatal blow he had prepared specifically for Luo Yunxian. "Go die for me!" Wu Yiming shouted fiercely, thrusting his right hand fiercely at Elder Luo. To avoid being detected as unusual in Jojo, even after occupying Shang Tianxiong's body, he fully cultivated Shang Tianxiong's body strength, epitomizing the title of body cultivation. It could be said that the current Shang Tianxiong's physical strength was undoubtedly the strongest in all of Jojo. This punch was enough to annihilate all creatures within a 10-mile radius. Boom! Wu Yiming's fist collided fiercely with Elder Luo's fist in the air. Crack! Crack! Bam! Wu Yiming gazed at his own arm in horror. The breath soil on his arm cracked inch by inch, and in the blink of an eye, his arm shattered into a cloud of blood mist. He had already exerted the strongest power he could muster. Yet in front of Luo Yunxian, it was still worthless. What kind of monster is this guy? Wu Yiming was completely baffled. He knew Luo Yunxian was very strong and had spent years studying Luo Yunxian's power. Luo Yunxian seldom acted in Jojo, only during beast tides. Over 20 years, Luo Yunxian had acted a few times. He thought he understood Luo Yunxian's power well enough, but was shocked to find that within this old man's body lurked an inexhaustible power, utterly beyond resistance at the late stage of heavenly connection. Bam! 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 Another round of strikes ensued, under Elder Luo's absolute power at the heavenly connection realm. Wu Yiming's body was entirely beaten into a bloody pulp. Damn it! Wu Yiming was furious, wanting to resist this power. Except for deploying the immortal realm, there was no other way. However, he was well aware that the immortal realm required a price, and once he engaged in the immortal realm, the outcome would definitely be death, 20+ years of undercover efforts would go to waste. Fortunately, Wu Yiming had prepared an alternative plan here. Whoosh! A long streak of light sliced through the void, shattering the emptiness. As it passed through, it blasted apart all the surrounding mountains, heading straight for Elder Luo. Elder Luo frowned, realizing he couldn't ignore this powerful force, and immediately kicked Wu Yiming aside, punching towards that force. Boom! 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 Violent spiritual power exploded centered around Elder Luo, leaving a huge crater on the ground, opening up crack after crack. The entire earth seemed like it was experiencing an earthquake, the fissures extending for thousands of meters. Elder Luo retreated, stopping in front of Professor Gua and others, solemnly staring at the person in front. It was a middle-aged man, wearing strange clothes, appearing no different from a human. But the aura emanating from him was starkly out of place with humans. The most bizarre was the frightening power he possessed. Immortal Realm. Elder Luo slowly spoke. What? Immortal Realm? Sun Hushuan and Yin Yanqing and others were taken aback, shocked. There was no Immortal Realm in Juzhou. Even Elder Luo was not a master of Immortal Realm. They didn't know how to step into the Immortal Realm, but had never imagined the person before them to be an Immortal Realm powerhouse. Wu Yiming finally breathed a sigh of relief, but his current body was already riddled with holes. Not a single piece of flesh intact. All bones deformed from beating, blood streaming, entirely unrecognizable as a human. Did you really think I couldn't deal with you? Wu Yiming spat, staring murderously at Luo Yunxian. Qian Qingba stared at the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared and exclaimed, Taoist Ranjin? You know him? Elder Luo said in a deep voice. Qian Qingba took a step closer, looking incredulous. He's a human race elder from the Edge Corner airspace. A warrior, a death warrior. But how could he appear here? Didn't he? The middle-aged man in front of them was indeed an elder of the human race from the Edge Corner airspace, with cultivation in the late Immortal Realm. When the Dao Palace slaughtered the human race in the Edge Corner airspace, many elders sacrificed themselves without hesitation to divert the Dao Palace's attention, giving the ordinary people time to escape. Taoist Ranjin was one of them. He was the Huayuyan of the 28 Death Warriors, originally thought to have been killed by the Dao Palace, yet now he appeared here. The breath soil on Wu Yiming's body slowly filled the wounds on his body, protecting his Dao sheath from collapsing. Then he sneered. Leaving some Immortal Realm human race behind was somewhat useful back then. You controlled him. Qian Qingba was furious. He had already seen that the eyes of Taoist Ranjin were filled with killing intent, completely devoid of any emotion, just like a puppet. What surprised him even more was that Taoist Ranjin, appearing with the strength of the early Immortal Realm in the Edge Corner airspace, meant he was already targeted by the heavenly Dao laws of the Great Desolate Realm and doomed. Ha ha ha! I want to see how you deal with your own people. By the way, your Taoist Ranjin, this time will truly die. But don't worry, he will at least take you with him before he dies. Wu Yiming looked at Luo Yunxian, his killing intent apparent. Qian Qingba clenched his fist, took a deep breath, and then stood beside Elder Luo. Professor Luo, leave here. I'll handle this person myself, he said calmly. Taoist Ranjin wielded the power of the Immortal Realm no matter how strong Elder Luo was. Being only at the late heavenly connection, there was still a significant gap, one realm apart. What are you going to do? Elder Luo asked. Eliminate the crisis here. Qian Qingba's tone was very calm. His task was to protect Elder Luo, to protect the true god of Juzhou at any cost. Even at the cost of his life. Taoist Ranjin being controlled stood with the other side. He wanted to eliminate the opponent. There was only one way. Unleash the power of the Immortal Realm. But Elder Luo stopped him. It's not necessary for you. He knew the consequences of Qian Qingba taking action. Professor Luo, this person is not someone you can handle. His current power is the early Immortal Realm. Qian Qingba thought Elder Luo hadn't heard him clearly, so he emphasized it again. That little rascal Xiang Beifei, didn't he ever do something like this? Elder Luo turned to look at Qian Qingba. What? Qian Qingba was momentarily unable to understand what Elder Luo meant. Elder Luo gave a faint smile. He went to the edge corner airspace. Did he never do something beyond his realm's capability there? Qian Qingba was stunned. He recalled Xiang Beifei's abilities in the edge corner airspace, charging into the heavily guarded Dao Palace alone, rescuing Chu Shi, bringing many enslaved human races back from the brink of death, and even destroying the city of the Dao Palace. At that time, Xiang Beifei's cultivation seemed to be just at the Inquiry Dao realm, yet he even killed a master of the Ascension realm. He did, didn't he? Elder Luo laughed. He understood this little rascal too well. Asking him to behave was impossible. But he is different. Qian Qingba didn't know how to explain. In his eyes, Xiang Beifei seemed incapable of being explained in normal terms. But Elder Luo rubbed his fist. I am his master. Whoosh! In the next instant, Elder Luo had already disappeared from his original place. And when he reappeared, he was in front of Taoist Ran Jin. Punching towards him, Taoist Ran Jin's body suddenly surged with the power of the immortal realm. This spiritual power was extremely terrifying, meeting Elder Luo's fist. Boom! Taoist Ran Jin of the immortal realm was like a falling stone, directly punched into the ground by Elder Luo, creating a huge pit with a diameter of over 1,000 meters. Can't lose face now. Elder Luo floated in the air, his fist exuding a chilling killing intent. In the early immortal realm, Taoist Ran Jin was punched into the ground by Elder Luo, something that no one had anticipated. That was the early immortal realm. The power and realm vastly outstripped that of the late heavenly connection. Entering the immortal realm means truly achieving immortality. A person will undergo an earth-shattering transformation, an ascension, incomparable to the late heavenly connection. Yet Elder Luo still managed to punch an early immortal level being away. So strong. Even Wu Yiming couldn't help but be surprised. He is in the ancestral Dao realm, standing at the pinnacle of the world, knowing better than anyone the chasm between the early immortal realm and late heavenly connection. Yet Elder Luo's punch shattered his understanding. However, Taoist Ran Jin didn't fall. He quickly floated into the air. Though his ribcage was caved in, it rapidly regenerated with the help of breath soil, and once again a tumultuous spiritual power surged from him. He could elevate his power to a higher realm, but the higher the power, the greater the threat from the heavenly Dao laws, thus shortening his survival time in the great desolate realm. So, to live longer, they must remain at the early immortal realm. Kill him for me. It's not unacceptable to die together. Wu Yiming shouted coldly, as he quickly retreated backward. Taoist Ran Jin was naturally brought by Su Qiyuan and Hu Judi, just that Su Qiyuan and Hu Judi were the vanguard, with others on their way and just now arriving. Being targeted by the heavenly Dao laws of the great desolate realm means being erased by them. The Dao Palace controls the resurrection through heavenly Dao laws, but this law has limitations. To resurrect someone, their soul imprint must exist in the ancestral artifact. Besides providing resurrection for their own, the Dao Palace would never do such a thing for others. In Wu Yiming's eyes, Taoist Ran Jin is just a tool, valuable only if he can kill Luo Yunxian. Taoist Ran Jin stretched out his hand, gradually condensing a spear made of breath soil. But this spear was tinged with a bloody aura, seemingly composed of the life essence of countless races, emitting a monstrous killing intent. With the spear's appearance, the entire sky echoed with the wails of countless vengeful spirits, morphing into innumerable eerie shapes. The sky was shrouded in a bloody mist, oppressive and chilling. This blood soil is refined by the Dao Palace from the soul spirits of countless races in the edge corner airspace. Given by Wu Yiming to Taoist Ran Jin to bolster his combat power to kill Luo Yunxian. Taoist Ran Jin's eyes glowed blood red. He immediately swung the spear toward the sky. A massive brown light column shot up, soaring into the heavens, with numerous powerful vengeful spirits gathering within, straining to break free. Buzz! The brown light column exploded, releasing all the vengeful spirits, transforming mid-air into streaks of blood-red cold light, rushing toward Elder Luo. Each blood-red light contained the power of an immortal realm being, far beyond what a martial artist in the Heavenly Connection realm could withstand. Elder Luo calmly watched the attacking vengeful spirits, white light gleaming in his eyes, transforming into ripples expanding outwards, concealing themselves. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The vengeful spirits rushed into Elder Luo's range, erased of consciousness, left with only the instinct to kill, and had identified Elder Luo as their next target of slaughter. Buzz. The vengeful spirits were swift, much faster than typical Heavenly Connection realm experts, almost matching Elder Luo's speed. In the blink of an eye, a deformed, desolate beast bit into Elder Luo's body. Clash! The first vengeful spirit opened its maw, sharp teeth glinting cold light, immediately transmitting a chilling, murderous aura into Elder Luo's body. Elder Luo smacked it away, but it took a chunk of his flesh, scattering red blood in midair. The blood sprayed from his body seemed to incite all the vengeful spirits, letting out piercing screams, becoming even more frenzied, as they charged at Elder Luo with reckless abandon. Clash! 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 One after another, the vengeful spirits bit into Elder Luo, covering every inch of him with their bites, with blood and flesh flying, dispersing in the air. Countless vengeful spirits began fighting amongst themselves over the scraps of flesh. Everything happened seamlessly. The vengeful spirits of the immortal realm were too powerful, leaving Elder Luo no room for evasion. Fools! That's just an illusion! Wu Yiming couldn't help but shout from afar upon witnessing the scene. With his sharp eyes, a mere spiritual power illusion couldn't deceive him. But the problem was, the vengeful spirits seemed oblivious, as Elder Luo's spiritual power sufficiently dealt with these minor spirits. The minor spirits, lacking consciousness, struggled to discern reality from illusion in the spiritual world. Elder Luo's greatest strength wasn't just his power. It was his unparalleled spiritual power. Though it appeared numerous vengeful spirits were biting him, in reality, these spirits were biting each other, misled by Elder Luo's spiritual power, mistaking their companions for targets, launching furious assaults. For a moment, terrifying murderous aura exploded in the sky, causing chaos among the vengeful spirits, leading them to mutual slaughter. But Elder Luo had already disappeared from where he was, leaping out of the area. His speed was still incredibly fast, lifting his fist and smashing towards Taoist Ranjin. The fist wind howled, mixed with terrifying force, creating a vacuum area in the air as it rushed straight toward Taoist Ranjin. Bam! The spear made of breath soil in Taoist Ranjin's hand was knocked away. The fist wind landed on Taoist Ranjin, and no matter how many vengeful souls and strange spirits were on him, they were directly blown away without a trace. Taoist Ranjin's body caved in directly, unable to withstand this punch, even with the defense of the immortal realm. However, Taoist Ranjin was just a controlled puppet. He felt no pain. Even though his body was dented, he quickly reacted, and the dispersed breath soil spear reformed in his hand, slashing towards Elder Luo. At the moment the breath soil spear slashed over, the spear shaft kept deforming, taking on various shapes of vengeful souls, sharp and bizarre. Elder Luo stretched out his right arm to block, fending off the vengeful souls on the breath soil spear. But the vengeful spirits on the breath soil spear did not shatter this time. Instead, they dodged the brute force with agility, wrapping around Elder Luo's arm, and then started biting down. Clang, clang, clang. These vengeful souls bit into Elder Luo's arm. But soon, intense spiritual power surged from Elder Luo, revolving around his arm in various ways, absorbing all the attacks from the vengeful souls. Then the spiritual power quivered fiercely. Counterattack. The biting attacks were counterattacked onto the vengeful souls, shattering them once more. With Xiang Beifei's help, Elder Luo had completely mastered the counterattack technique originally belonging to Professor Gua, thus possessing extremely strong defense. However, seizing the opportunity to get close, Taoist Ranjin had already grasped a scarlet light from the void, slashing at Elder Luo's head. This scarlet light was too swift to be fended off with just a counterattack. Elder Luo tilted his head an inch to the left, the scarlet light carrying a corrosive aura sliced through his brow, leaving a scar on his face. Ultimately, Taoist Ranjin was a practitioner at the early immortal realm. His speed and strength were not inferior to Elder Luo's, wounding Elder Luo. But Elder Luo immediately turned and kicked, striking Taoist Ranjin's shoulder. Powerful spiritual power gathered in his foot like a sharp axe, splitting Taoist Ranjin's shoulder apart. Even knowing Taoist Ranjin was a controlled human, Elder Luo showed no mercy, for he couldn't afford to. The gap in strength was too wide. Without going all out, there was no way to resolve the opponent. Taoist Ranjin's shoulder shattered, and the breath soil surged out, ready to repair the injury. But a glint flashed in Elder Luo's eyes, powerful energy already spreading onto the breath soil. Familiar with the breath soil, because Xiang Beifei had just conveyed the matters of the Dao Palace's breath soil through memory to Elder Luo, even teaching him how to counter it. Following Xiang Beifei's method, the spiritual power had already dispersed into each grain of breath soil, disrupting the operation of the breath soil dust in various ways, then violently shook it. Boom! The breath soil on Taoist Ranjin was completely blocked, and Elder Luo seized the opportunity to cleave Taoist Ranjin's body in two. Whoosh! Elder Luo firmly suppressed the two halves of Taoist Ranjin's body, smashing him to the ground, then cast out a stream of spiritual power, creating an illusion from which Taoist Ranjin could no longer escape. Yet he himself expended considerable spiritual power. This time it was not a disguise like before, but a real massive consumption in facing a master of the immortal realm, forcing even Elder Luo to go all out. The immortal realm does have some skills. Elder Luo touched the scar on his brow, where a violent aura was rampaging, trying to invade his body but was forcibly held back by him. Do you still remember being part of the human race? Elder Luo's voice transformed into rolling sound waves reverberating in Taoist Ranjin's mind. But Taoist Ranjin still had no response, trapped in the spiritual illusion crafted by Elder Luo, continuously slaughtering. There remained an extremely peculiar aura swirling upon him, devouring his body and even tormenting his sealed divine soul. That was the power of the heavenly Tao laws. Elder Luo understood what the power of the heavenly Tao was, as Xiang Beifei had told him everything. Alas! Qian Qingba sighed lightly, looking at Taoist Ranjin with some reluctance. Once a sacrifice for the human race, now ending up being exterminated by the heavenly Tao. Elder Luo shifted his gaze onto Wu Yiming. Having resolved Taoist Ranjin, he had to quickly deal with this man. But Wu Yiming seemed to sense something, sneering. So this is where your limit lies. This was the most surprising martial artist Wu Yiming had ever seen, able to rapidly diminish other capabilities and focus all power into a singular point. Such strength could threaten practitioners at the early immortal realm, even without reaching the immortal realm in cultivation. Truly unique. Late heavenly connection, comparable to early immortal realm strength, but I want to see how long you can maintain it. Wu Yiming stood motionless, yet behind him, in the dense fog, numerous auras shot forth, human figures slowly becoming visible. 1, 2, 3. A rough count showed at least over 50 experts at the heavenly connection level. And these were just the visible ones. Who knew how many more were hidden in the mist behind? Moreover, all were uniformly at the late heavenly connection level. Or at least they were all late heavenly connection level. The appearance of these individuals further changed Qian Qingba's expression. Masters from the Dao Palace and other races from Edge Corner airspace. Their true strength is at least immortal realm, possibly even higher, Qian Qingba said in astonishment. Each person present had eyes emitting a red light similar to Taoist Ranjin's, indicating they too were controlled puppets, ready to break through to the immortal realm and be sacrificed at any time. It's lively here indeed. A voluptuous woman walked over elegantly, her attire very peculiar, made up of breath soil, yet not appearing cumbersome, instead casting a gauze-like haziness. As soon as she arrived, her gaze fell on Elder Luo, slightly raising an eyebrow, then flashing a charming smile at Elder Luo. Wu Xian, another formidable ancestral Dao realm master. Elder Xian came a bit late, Wu Yiming said. No choice. This place is truly remote. Your marker is a bit off. Not easy to find. No wonder we couldn't find these human race mice for thousands of years. They've been hiding here. Wu Xian smiled, then took a detailed look at Elder Luo. So this is Zhuzhou's number one? Very strong. You and I are no match for him in the great desolate realm, Wu Yiming reminded. Is that so? Wu Xian visibly skeptical, but seeing the subdued Taoist Ranjin, she nodded slightly, wisely choosing not to test Elder Luo unnecessarily. With strength at her level, she naturally looked down on those at the heavenly connection realm. But in the great desolate realm, those who could suppress an early immortal realm without provoking the divine marks of the heavenly Tao deserved at least basic respect. Since that's the case, then send 5 to handle him. Wu Xian glanced at the puppets behind her, casually waving a hand and pushing 5 of them forward. Buzz, 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 buzz. The 5 people instantly radiated powerful light, breaking through to the early immortal realm in an instant. This is trouble. Elder Luo's expression became grave. He could rely on his unique system to redistribute power and forcibly suppress a single early immortal realm, almost going all out. But handling 5 early immortal realms wasn't so simple. The most crucial point was they were far more than just 5 people, ready to sacrifice even more immortal realms to deal with him. The sudden appearance of several masters in the immortal realm also changed the expressions of Sun Hushuan and Professor Gua. Although Qian Qingba had already explained to them that masters in the immortal realm would be obliterated by the heavenly Tao laws when they exert their powers here. Even so, as long as one such master was willing to sacrifice, it would be enough to sweep across the human race in Zhuzhou before the heavenly Tao laws erased them. Go back and guard the front lines, Elder Luo shouted at Professor Gua and the others. It's not possible, Luo. You can't handle it alone, Professor Gua said solemnly. Go quickly. This is an order. Elder Luo gave a low shout and sent a palm toward the 3 of them, bringing up a light that instantly pushed them towards the direction of Zhuzhou, hundreds of miles away. But at this time, the 5 masters of the immortal realm in the sky had already rushed over, and their target was, without exception, Elder Luo. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 5 different powerful auras swirled on their bodies, surrounding Elder Luo. Elder Luo's gaze sharpened. He immediately charged forward, sending one of them flying with a punch. But the other 4 had already rushed over, attacking him from different directions. For Elder Luo, the speed of the 4 immortal realm masters was not slow. He only managed to block 3. The 4th had already slapped out a hand, hitting his back. Elder Luo took 2 steps back, his eyebrows furrowed deeply, a burning pain flaring up on his back. This slap was no joke. But those 5 people gathered together again, closing in on him once more. Just at this moment, a 6th powerful aura soared into the sky, appearing extremely sharp, followed by a radiant sword beam rising from the ground, slicing towards these 5 immortal realm masters. Buzz! One of the immortal realm masters was instantly obliterated. Qian Qingba was already standing in front of Elder Luo. What are you doing? Elder Luo was stunned. At this time, Qian Qingba's body was enveloped in strong sword qi, the sword qi emitting chilling rays, startlingly in the immortal realm. Doing what I should do. Qian Qingba held a 3-foot green blade, face calm. You will die, Elder Luo shouted. I know. Qian Qingba raised the sword in his hand, and amidst the brilliant sword light, stirred the storm and clouds of this piece of heaven and earth. The thunderclouds in the sky gathered above him, forming a vortex. In an instant, the thunder roared, countless blue lightning bolts roared, and within a blink, these thunderclouds began to churn, then fell towards the 5 immortal realm masters below. As these lightning bolts fell from the sky, they gradually transformed into a thunder sword, each sword beam containing the power of 10,000 thunder, seemingly capable of annihilating a section of heaven and earth. Boom! The immortal realm master nearest wanted to resist this thunder sword chi, but he had just leaped high into the air when a thunder sword restrained him, instantly obliterating him to ash. Even at the initial stage of the immortal realm, there are different disparities. Qian Qingbao's strength far exceeds these people. Buzz, buzz, buzz. These thunder swords were not only crashing down towards those 5 immortal realm masters, but also towards Wu Xian and Wu Yiming, 2 Dao Palace masters. I was wondering when you wouldn't be able to hold back anymore. Wu Yiming coldly watched Qian Qingbao. He had known long ago that Qian Qingbao was a human race from Edge Corner airspace, so he had already prepared for everything. He turned and looked at those racial puppets behind him, waved a hand, and 2 burly men had already rushed towards Qian Qingbao. These 2 men, one was an immortal realm master caught from the Shield Dao race, with extremely strong defensive power. The other was from the Spear Dao race, with almost unrivaled offensive power in the same phase, both of them enveloped in breath soil, immediately meeting the flashing thunder sword light in the air. Boom! The Shield Dao race man stood in front, not even dodging. A thick black-gray light emanated from his body, covering the front, completely blocking the crashing thunder sword light. And at this time, the Spear Dao race master shot out from behind the Shield Dao race man. Countless dark spears appeared instantly in the air. These spears pierced through the void, straight towards Qian Qingbao. Boom! 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 Sword beams and spears fiercely clashed. The terrifying power released swept everything within a 100-mile radius, the ground continuously cracking, the air becoming restless and uneasy. For the moment, Qian Qingbao couldn't deal with the masters from the Spear Dao race and Shield Dao race, for these 2 had cultivated their Dao embryo to the extreme defense and extreme attack, making it difficult for him to free himself. The cultivators from Shield Dao race and Spear Dao race are really useful. You should capture a few more to be puppets. Wu Yiming couldn't help but say. I hadn't expected it to be this troublesome. I thought it would be easy to annihilate the human race, so I only caught 4. Wu Xian said. Then let the remaining 2 deal with Luo Yunxian and see whether his power is stronger or the defensive power of the Shield Dao race cultivators. Wu Yiming said with a cold smile. Swoosh! Swoosh! The remaining Shield Dao race and Spear Dao race masters also surged up formidable immortal realm aura, charging towards Elder Luo. Elder Luo was originally engaging 3 immortal realm masters in battle. It was already very strenuous for him, but at this time, a dark shadow came from a distance through the air, with extreme speed and extremely terrifying. Without any hesitation, he swung his fist, punching towards that dark shadow. But when his fist blasted out, a thick gray spiritual power barrier suddenly appeared in front of him. Buzz! His punch was completely blocked. There was no way to break through the spiritual power shield of the opponent. But that black ray shot out from behind the spiritual power shield. With a whoosh, it blasted into his fist. PSH. Elder Luo's fist was directly pierced by the black shadow spear, which even drilled along his fist towards his arm. Not good. Elder Luo made a quick decision, immediately twisted his arm, and the black shadow spear penetrated from his fist, coming out of his elbow. He felt a burning pain from his arm and completely lost sensation in it. PSH. The right arm was completely shattered. At this moment, another person on the left side took advantage of his turn, swinging the blade in his hand, slashing at Elder Luo's back. He had done his best to gather defense, but he was still slashed by the sharp blade, leaving a deep wound visible to the bone, and the immense force sent him flying. Elder Luo's body smashed into the ground, creating a large pit. The early immortal realm and late heavenly connection stages are vastly different. Perhaps Elder Luo could take down one early immortal realm master in a one-on-one fight, but being besieged by 4 or 5 immortal realm masters was too much for him. The disparity in strength was too great. Elder Luo struggled to get up, swallowing a spiritual power crystal given by Xiang Beifei, restoring the spiritual power lost inside him. This crystal was specially prepared for him by Xiang Beifei, who knew him well, so his spiritual power restored almost instantly. Elder Luo looked at his leisure system. He allocated all his leisure value into his healing ability, and the broken arm and injuries were rapidly repairing, the severed right hand quickly regenerating. Yet it was futile, as at best he could only hold out a bit longer relying on the spiritual power crystal. He simply couldn't defeat these people. Elder Luo turned his head towards Qian Qingba, who had already recovered to the early immortal realm, and a resolute look appeared in his eyes. Seems I have no other choice. The leisure system was his greatest reliance, allowing him to adjust his various capabilities to an extremely extreme state. But this system also constrained him. In other words, it was precisely the leisure system that kept him from breaking through to higher realms. Daoist Qingda used the Dao embryo system to protect all humans, enabling the human race to survive in the Great Desolate Realm. But the power of the Great Desolate Realm's heavenly Dao was too powerful, preventing humans from living here forever. In the past, Daoist Qingda would secretly select some late heavenly connection masters who could not touch the barrier of immortality or enter the immortal realm, so they could only live for a few hundred years. Ultimately, their lifespans were limited. When these late heavenly connection masters neared the end of their lifespan, Daoist Qingda would find them and tell them the truth. With their consent, he would take them to Edge Corner airspace to sever the Dao so they could cultivate to the immortal realm and continue living. Elder Luo was incredibly strong, being the only true god in Jiuzhou at present, and his abilities were undeniable, plus his system was unique, giving him a much longer lifespan than ordinary people. Daoist Qingda never asked him to go to Edge Corner airspace because he knew Jiuzhou needed a backbone. Surrounded by enemies, desolate beasts eyed Jiuzhou covetously, frequently attacking and breaching its defenses. Daoist Qingda often had to leave Jiuzhou to journey to and from Edge Corner airspace, a round trip taking 2 years, so someone had to guard Jiuzhou. Luo Yunxian and Luo Shanyu, the brothers, were rare geniuses of the human race in a millennium, so Daoist Qingda chose to let Luo Shanyu go to Edge Corner airspace to sever the Dao and protect the human race from the Kangji Abyss, leaving Luo Yunxian in Jiuzhou to protect the human race there. All this he only understood after learning the truth from Xiang Beifei's memories. But now, to deal with the immortal realm masters before him, there was only one way. Sever the Dao. I must ultimately protect the safety of Jiuzhou. Elder Luo looked at his leisure system and sighed softly. He was very familiar with his system, which had been with him for over 300 years, allowing him to grow stronger by doing leisurely activities. Because of this system, he maintained an optimistic attitude like a carefree fish daily. In fact, he had long understood how to step into the immortal realm. He was a wise man, realizing why he couldn't break through the barrier of immortality when everyone had systems, and Xiang Beifei didn't. He had long known that to grow stronger, he had to sever this system. Xiang Beifei didn't tell him how to sever the Dao, but he figured it out himself. Elder Luo raised his head, eyes filled with fearless and unrepentant fighting spirit. He adjusted his strength to the optimal state. The spiritual power within him poured out crazily, surging towards his system. The system, disturbed by his power, began to destabilize. Then, crack. A crack appeared in the system. The power of the heavenly Dao laws penetrated through the crack, intimidating him. So this is the power of the heavenly Dao laws. The power within him had reached a critical point. Buzz. His system interface turned snowy. The leisure system shattered. However, a more formidable power gathered onto him from the heavens and earth, spiritual power converging around him, forging his body, and in just a blink, his soul seemed to have experienced a new transcendence, reaching an unprecedentedly powerful level. Elder Luo's cultivation had stagnated in the late heavenly connection for too long. The power amassed within his body far exceeded this realm. Perhaps due to prolonged suppression, his realm soared at an extreme speed. If this breakthrough happened in Edge Corner airspace, his strength would far surpass that of the early immortal realm. But the stronger his power grew, the more he felt the might of the heavenly Dao laws. Now it had descended upon him. Swoosh! Elder Luo frowned, deeply serious. His soul was harmed by the heavenly Dao law's irreversible damage. If he continued to ascend, the harm would increase, and his survival time in this state would likely be shorter. He immediately suppressed his power, then looked at the 5 immortal realm masters before him, his eyes glowing golden. Swoosh! 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 2 cultivators from the Shield Dao race and Spear Dao race charged towards Elder Luo once more. Their speed incredibly fast, accompanied by an unstoppable whistling. But this time, their attacking and defensive capabilities had transformed to a lower level in his eyes. Elder Luo suddenly threw a punch. Boom! The indestructible spiritual power shield created by the Shield Dao race cultivator was shattered by a single punch from Elder Luo. His fist continued, punching its way through to the Shield Dao race cultivator's face, landing on him. Bam! The soul of the Shield Dao race cultivator was instantly shattered into pieces, dying on the spot. Countless fragments of spiritual power chaotically flew in the air, the violent aura scattering everywhere, devastating the earth once more. Wu Yiming and Wu Xian were both shocked, unable to help but frown. The Shield Dao race, known as the strongest defensive race of the same realm, was unexpectedly shattered by a single punch from Elder Luo. Elder Luo punched again, his terrifying fist blasting the head of the Spear Dao race cultivator. Boom! 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 Within the span of a breath, 5 Immortal Realm Masters were directly killed by Elder Luo. Truly powerful, but he's doomed. Wu Yiming looked at Elder Luo. Using Immortal Realm power here means death. But Elder Luo's majestic golden eyes turned towards Wu Yiming. The intent to kill was fully revealed. Even in death, he would wipe out this crowd. Wu Yiming and Wu Xian both sensed Elder Luo's killing intent and simultaneously changed their expressions. They knew that Luo Yunxian was already in a situation of certain death. As long as they waited for the heavenly Dao laws to completely destroy his soul, the entire Zhuzhou human race could be entirely wiped out. But they overlooked one thing. Practitioners at the early stage of the immortal realm can still live for a short time before being killed by the heavenly Dao laws. This means they could kill them. Wu Yiming and Wu Xian both didn't want to die like this. Seeing Elder Luo targeting them, they immediately waved a hand towards the puppets behind them and commanded, "Kill him for me!" Buzz! 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 This time, more than 10 puppets emitted the aura of the immortal realm, immediately blocking in front and charging towards Elder Luo. Elder Luo struck out again, obliterating one of them from the immortal realm, but the others went all out, raising their powers to the mid-stage immortal realm. Although elevating to the mid-stage immortal realm would cause them to die faster here, likely not surviving beyond 10 breaths, they were bound to die anyway. As long as they could kill Luo Yunxian, it was enough. 3 mid-stage immortal realm practitioners wrapped in breath soil rapidly encircled Elder Luo, forming a powerful barrier, trapping him inside. This time, Elder Luo felt unprecedented pressure. He was about to shatter the barrier with a punch when the powers within the 3 mid-stage immortal masters suddenly began to swell furiously, becoming incomparably chaotic. Not good. Elder Luo realized something was wrong. These 3 mid-stage immortal realm practitioners intended to self-destruct. Boom! 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 The violent aura exploded abruptly, raising a terrifying wave centered on Elder Luo, with the chaotic spiritual power storm destroying everything. Elder Luo wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The aura was too terrifying, instantly sweeping over him. Is it going to end just like this? Elder Luo sighed inwardly. This time, neither illusions nor absolute power were of use, and his defense couldn't withstand the frenzied storm from the explosion of 3 mid-stage immortal realm masters. The explosive light engulfed his sight. He couldn't see the world at all, as if the world became a vast white chaos. The blinding light left him unable to sense the outside, devoid of any perception. Is this death? Elder Luo didn't feel any pain, nor did he perceive his body being torn apart. As if nothing had happened, his consciousness remained, able to sense his hands and every part of his body. This is death? He opened his eyes. What met his eyes were 2 beams of black and white light. The familiar black and white light surrounded him, encasing him, spinning rapidly, while the violent waves from the self-destruction of the 3 mid-stage immortal practitioners outside still invaded here, but were entirely blocked by the black and white light. Elder Luo slightly scanned and vaguely saw a silhouette standing in front of him. This silhouette was very familiar, sturdy and reliable, with black and white aura flowing around him. Luo stared at the suddenly appearing figure, slightly dazed. Buzz! The spiritual power storm dissipated. Everything slowly returned to calm, but that silhouette withstood it all. You! Elder Luo was momentarily unable to recognize this person. Sorry, I'm late. He turned back, showing an apologetic expression. That familiar expression, that familiar face, still somehow infuriating. You little brat, you came back. Elder Luo showed a shocked expression. The one who defended him against all danger was his long-separated disciple, the one he had missed for a long time. Yes. Xiang Beifei smiled gently. He extended his hand, and black and white light spread from his palm to Elder Luo, isolating Elder Luo's aura from the heavenly Tao laws. How did you? Rest for a while, I will finish handling the troubles. Xiang Beifei then turned around, gazing at Wu Yiming and Wu Xian. His smile vanished, replaced by an overwhelmingly murderous aura. There's no need for you to live. Xiang Beifei coldly eyed the two of them. Xiang Beifei. Wu Yiming recognized the young man in front of him, and a shock filled his heart. The aura on this young man was extremely terrifying, having just relied on the black and white ability to withstand the terrifying waves from 3 mid-stage immortal realms self-destructing. The self-destructs of mid-stage immortal practitioners would be no big deal in the edge-corner airspace, but here in the great desolate realm, constituting the most formidable force, not even the two of them might withstand it. Yet this young man managed to block it. Did he exhibit mid-stage immortal power? Wu Xian said sternly. Only mid-stage immortal power could withstand these forces. No, if he used mid-stage immortal power, under the attack of the heavenly Tao laws in the great desolate realm, he should be torn apart directly. He couldn't survive more than 10 breaths, Wu Yiming remarked. But more than 10 breaths had passed since the explosion's aftershock was blocked until it dissipated. This young man showed no signs of being destroyed by the heavenly Tao, as if the heavenly Tao laws directly ignored him. Who exactly is this guy? Wu Xian furrowed his brows. Xiang Beifei. Xiang Qingde, Wu Feng's grandson, Wu Yiming said with an extremely grim face. Wu Feng. Wu Xian's expression changed. The name Wu Feng was like a nightmare, always weighing on their hearts. But they never expected to encounter his descendant now. Moreover, it seemed that this young man's power was quite bizarre, able to exert strength that didn't match his cultivation level under the formidable heavenly Tao laws of the great desolate realm. Attack! Kill him with everything you've got! Wu Yiming shouted at all the puppets. Buzz! 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 All the puppets behind them erupted with powerful auras, all breaking through to the immortal realm, soaring into the air and blocking Xiang Beifei. Counting carefully, there were at least over 50 of them. Initially, they had planned to manipulate experts from other races to come to Zhuzhou, aiming to exterminate all humans. Normally, killing Luo Yunxian would suffice, and with their late heavenly connection power, they could annihilate the entire Zhuzhou. But now, Xiang Beifei's appearance made them take him seriously. Even if it meant sacrificing all these puppets, they had to kill Xiang Beifei. Swish! 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 All the puppets flew towards Xiang Beifei, their bodies enveloped in the dust of breath soil, which temporarily amplified their strength here. These experts approached fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, they completely surrounded Xiang Beifei. The spiritual power on their bodies rapidly condensed, forming a very powerful killing formation, firmly trapping Xiang Beifei. Divine Soil Extinction Formation. This formation connected everyone, over 50 immortal realm practitioners, their powers interwoven with breath soil, forming a massive circular barrier around Xiang Beifei. Every corner of the barrier held extremely powerful forces, evenly distributed, and could rapidly concentrate their power at any point under attack to withstand it. Conversely, they could also focus the power of everyone in the formation onto one individual, unleashing a power equivalent to the combined strength of several people. The most crucial point is that the Divine Soil Extinction Formation composed of more than 50 practitioners doesn't merely gather the power of over 50 initial immortal realm levels. It can even sacrifice one practitioner, allowing them to break through to the mid-immortal realm, transferring all their power to the formation before their death, thereby strengthening the formation. And currently, the Divine Soil Extinction Formation lacked no puppets willing to die. Buzz! 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 In an instant, 10 practitioners directly broke through to the mid-immortal realm, transferring their power into the divine soil extinction formation. Wu Yiming held nothing back. As long as Xiang Beifei could be killed, allowing all 50 to sacrifice themselves was not an issue. Now, within the divine soil extinction formation, all the mid-immortal realm powers converged onto one practitioner at the front, and the powerful, terrifying force was ready to burst, instantly rushing towards Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei coldly raised his head, his eyes flickering with a black light, a broken sword already in his hand. The woofing broken sword instantly shone with a black and white light. This brilliance was extremely dazzling, piercing the sky, as if splitting the entire world in two. Buzz! He slashed his sword towards the force of the divine soil extinction formation. Boom! The sword light flashed, clashing with the mid-immortal realm powers. The entire world stalled for a moment, then suddenly exploded. The black and white aura instantly shattered the force of the divine soil extinction formation, and those 10 mid-immortal realm forces were unexpectedly crushed by the sword light. Xiang Beifei swung his sword again. Bang! The strong, resilient divine soil extinction formation shattered like this, offering no resistance in front of Wu Feng's sword light. Swish! 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 When the divine soil extinction formation exploded, the more than 50 practitioners also suffered a severe backlash, all being wiped out by Xiang Beifei's sword. How is he unharmed? Wu Yiming was increasingly shocked. He wasn't shocked that Xiang Beifei could annihilate these over 50 practitioners, but because Xiang Beifei had annihilated these over 50 practitioners and was still alive, it was as if the heavenly Tao laws of the great desolate realm were ineffective on Xiang Beifei. Retreat! Wu Xian shouted decisively, transforming into a breath soil and escaping swiftly. Wu Yiming did not hesitate, as they did not understand what was going on with Xiang Beifei, but they knew that staying would mean their deaths next. Almost in the moment the divine soil extinction formation was destroyed, the two had already retreated, and their retreat was extremely swift. However, just 100 miles out, the land ahead suddenly kicked up a vast swirl of sand, like a curtain sweeping in from all directions. Bam! Bam! Wu Yiming and Wu Xian were forced out from the soil, standing in mid-air, astounded by the flying dust around them. This is not breath soil. Both Wu Yiming and Wu Xian were utterly astonished. One must know that breath soil was an ability of their Hutu tribe, with each Tao Palace elder able to control it, utilizing its unique properties for battle. No ordinary race could oppose them. But they never imagined the day would come when their most proud divine artifact would be used to trap them instead. It was like a colossal joke. I don't believe it! Wu Yiming shouted, forming a powerful attack in his hand and fiercely blasting towards the breath soil. Bam! The breath soil dust did not yield but instead quickly spread along his spiritual power onto him. Strangely, the aura of this breath soil was entirely opposite to his, making it impossible to repel. Why can he control our breath soil? Wu Yiming was filled with rage and shock. The opponent not only controlled their Hutu tribe's breath soil, but his mastery far surpassed theirs, making them feel utterly humiliated. But they had no time for further thought, as Xiang Beifei's figure had already appeared before them. I told you, you aren't going anywhere. Xiang Beifei raised the woofing in his hand. Buzz! The woofing broken sword suddenly erupted with powerful sword light, slashing down towards Wu Yiming and Wu Xian. Don't you underestimate us. Wu Yiming and Wu Xian were not willing to sit and wait for death. In this state, they couldn't match Xiang Beifei. The only option now was to break free and exert power beyond the mid-immortal realm. Buzz! Buzz! An intense, terrifying surge erupted from their bodies, breaking free from restraints and pushing towards the late immortal realm. They were unique cases, but using late immortal realm power in the great desolate realm meant they wouldn't survive more than 5 breaths. However, without doing so, they would be cut down by Xiang Beifei, making them feel even more suffocated. Either way, they would die, so they might as well kill Xiang Beifei before they do. The two late immortal realm forces intertwined, forming a terrifying vortex. Both Wu Yiming and Wu Xian were ancestral Dao realm experts, their power far beyond those previous puppets. Even before dying, we must kill you first. Wu Yiming shouted as he and Wu Xian exploded with red blood soil. These two red blood soils' impact was incredibly fearsome, enough to exterminate creatures within 1,000 miles. Yet, Xiang Beifei's sword light remained cool and frosty, slashing straight down towards them. Buzz! The sword light pierced through the two blood soils, directly shattering the violent blood soil. Simultaneously, the burning yang and burning yin flames ignited upon the blood soil. Ah! Just wait. When we revive, we'll definitely destroy you. The flames echoed with Wu Yiming and Wu Xian's horrified screams. The excruciating pain of their bodies burning was unbearable. Swish! Swish! Before the heavenly Dao's power could kill them, Xiang Beifei's flames had already taken their souls, refining them into two spiritual power crystals. Revive? That's unlikely. Xiang Beifei waved his hand, collecting the two late ancestral Dao realm spiritual power crystals into his palm. This area has regained its peace. But now it has also become a mess. Within 100 miles, no desolate beast survived. The ground is full of grooves and cracks left by the battle, and a lingering aura of killing intent fills the air. Lord Human King. Qian Qingba was extremely excited when he saw Xiang Beifei. Are you all right? Xiang Beifei raised his hand, infusing yin and yang primordial energy onto Qian Qingba, using it to disguise and conceal the power of the heavenly Dao laws in the great desolate realm. I'm all right, my lord. Qian Qingba hurriedly replied. As long as you're okay. Xiang Beifei turned his gaze to Elder Luo, then showed an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, I should have come earlier. You still know to come back. Luo snorted, pretending to be calm. But in reality, he was secretly relieved that this kid finally decided to return. I'm sorry. Xiang Beifei walked over to check Luo's injuries. Did Elder Luo sever the Dao? Without severing the Dao, I couldn't win. Luo felt the wound on his spirit and tried to heal it, but the heavenly Dao laws of the great desolate realm had injured his spirit. No matter how he tried, he couldn't suppress this wound. Severing the Dao means cutting off the system's protection. The human race could not originally live in the great desolate realm. They barely survived here through the system's protection. Without it, they couldn't survive here. I'm sorry, it's my fault, Xiang Beifei said. You keep apologizing and saying sorry. Don't think you can get away with just those words. You've disappeared for years, and now you come back with just a couple of sorries. Luo snorted again. Elder Luo, teach me a lesson as you see fit. Just know that I have thick skin. Xiang Beifei said. You. Luo was momentarily at a loss, glaring angrily at Xiang Beifei. This little rascal still enjoys provoking people the same as before, always having the knack for leaving someone speechless. Forget it. Forget it. Kicking you would only hurt my own old bones. He smiled wryly, but in his heart he felt quite emotional. Knowing that this child returned safely made him feel genuinely relieved. Being fine is more important than anything else. It's just. Luo checked on the wound on his spirit and smiled bitterly. It seems my end is near. His spirit was like porcelain, already covered in cracks, almost ready to collapse. Damage to the spirit is irreversible. No matter how powerful he was, the heavenly Dao laws were too much to withstand, even for mighty beings like the old giant spirit. Now that his core is hurt by the heavenly Dao laws, although the power of the laws is temporarily kept at bay by the yin and yang primordial energy, preventing further damage to his spirit, the wound on his spirit is too severe for him to find a way to reverse it. The injury to your spirit is nothing to worry about. Xiang Beifei raised his hand, and the aura of return to the original state quickly spread over Luo, covering the cracks in his spirit with a white light, slowly repairing the damage. For him now, healing the spirit is no longer a difficult task. You can heal the spirit? Luo asked in surprise. This kind of injury was usually akin to being at death's door, almost irreversible, yet Xiang Beifei managed to pull him back just like that. Otherwise, how could I say I'm thick-skinned? Xiang Beifei shrugged and muttered softly. Being thick-skinned requires assurance. Luo. For a moment, he was lost for words. In just a moment, Luo's spirit had returned to its original state. This kind of heaven-defying healing ability truly amazed him because, in his imagination, no one could recover so easily after having their spirit damaged. So, does this mean that when you wield eternal power in the domain of the Great Desolate Realm, what we call the Great Desolate Realm here, there won't be any issues? Luo asked. Not exactly. The heavenly Tao laws in the Great Desolate Realm are still very powerful. They are still eyeing me with hostility, ready to destroy me at any moment. However, since I reached the ancestral Tao realm and began to perceive the heavenly Tao laws, I've learned how to handle it. Xiang Beifei explained. Before reaching the ancestral Tao realm, he couldn't completely control the heavenly Tao laws. If he used too much eternal power, things would still go wrong. But after stepping into the ancestral Tao realm, he could resonate with the heavenly Tao laws and touch the essence of this world, having an idea of how to avoid their assaults. After reaching the ancestral Tao realm yesterday, he rushed from Bone Mountain Desert Stone Cave to Zhuzhou at lightning speed, using the power of the Inquiry Tao realm. Because the stronger the realm power employed in the Great Desolate Realm, the stronger the heavenly Tao laws obliteration methods. Though he's not very afraid of these forces' obliteration now, exceeding the Inquiry Tao realm in speed would make the heavenly Tao laws' power extremely potent. At that point, he would have to stop and contend with that power, which would slow down his speed. Thus, he tried repeatedly and found that maintaining the realm at the Inquiry Tao realm allowed him to travel quickly while barely coping with the heavenly Tao laws' attacks. Fortunately, otherwise, had he been a moment later, both Luo and Qian Qingba would have been in trouble. You reached the ancestral Tao realm? Is that the ancestral Tao realm of eternal, inquiring, ascending, ancestral Tao? Luo asked in amazement. He doesn't have much concept of power beyond the immortal realm because he's lived in Zhuzhou all his life, and the highest realm offered by the system is only the immortal realm. Those realms like Inquiring Tao, Ascending Tao, and Ancestral Tao were told to him by Xiang Beifei's memory last time. Yes. Good boy, you've got prospects, Elder Luo said with a satisfied smile. Reaching the Ancestral Tao realm is like standing at the pinnacle of this world. Currently, there are only a few masters of the human race who have reached the ancestral Tao realm. Unexpectedly, this kid managed to achieve it. So, are you now the strongest in the world? I wouldn't say the strongest, but I am confident enough to face those ancestral Tao realm masters at the Tao Palace. Xiang Beifei said. There is still a gap between ancestral Tao realms. In the past, he didn't dare to easily fight opponents, but now he has the confidence. Of course, it doesn't mean he is currently the strongest because the most powerful thing in this world is still the ancestral artifacts. The ancestral artifacts are the roots of determining power. Elder Luo scrutinized Xiang Beifei and stroked his short white beard. Suddenly thinking of something, his eyes rolled as he said, "Wait, I still have to give you a beating." He raised his hand and knocked Xiang Beifei on the head. Ow! Didn't we settle this already? Xiang Beifei rubbed his head, pouting. Even an ancestral Tao realm who's standing at the world's peak gets knocked on the head by me honestly. Isn't that really something to brag about? Ha ha ha. Elder Luo laughed proudly, hands on hips. Xiang Beifei, you're really idle, aren't you? Already of a ripe old age, yet still doing things recklessly as usual, so carefree. Calling you Luo Yunxian is truly fitting. Elder Luo chuckled heartily for a moment, habitually looking up at his system interface, but soon his smile gradually faded, and he sighed. He no longer has the system interface. In the past, his leisure system would certainly jump out with a prompt. You knocked on the head of the world's peak ancestral Tao realm, making yourself unbearably impressive, leisure value plus 666,666. Unfortunately, the leisure system that accompanied him for over 300 years was just severed by him earlier, and he can no longer see those interesting prompts. Xiang Beifei once again unleashed the power of return to the original state on Qian Qingba, repairing his soul injuries. Afterwards, he asked, "Is Elder Luo missing his system? After all, it followed me for hundreds of years, suddenly gone. It takes some getting used to." Elder Luo said with emotion. I thought Elder Luo's greatest wish was to break free from the system's constraints. Xiang Beifei said, I'm not just trying to break free from the system's constraints but rather wanting to change the system level-based social order of the Alliance, where the system level awakened at 18 directly determines one's social status, which is somewhat unfair. Elder Luo said, in the old Alliance, systems were ranked supreme. As long as it was SR, SSR, or UR, even if they committed serious mistakes, they would be brushed off by the Alliance. This system within Jojo had significant flaws, but because resisting the desolate beasts required these high-level system awakeners, he couldn't completely reform it. Xiang Beifei nodded thoughtfully, and after a moment, he stretched out his hand. The yin and yang source energy in his palm quickly transformed, condensing onto Elder Luo's snowflake-like system interface. Soon, Elder Luo's system interface began to subtly change. The snowflake screen started to disappear, and a few lines of text slowly became visible. Dao Master, Luo Yunxian. Dao Level, Leisure System. Realm, Late Heavenly Connection. Leisure System Introduction. Doing leisurely things every day can make you stronger. This. Elder Luo was stunned. His severed system's Dao embryo could still be restored? You can even do this? Elder Luo looked at the restored leisure system, eyes wide open. I can control systems. Did Elder Luo forget? Xiang Beifei said. You've mastered the system to this level? You can arbitrarily change other people's systems. Previously, I could only disguise my own, but upon reaching the ancestral Dao realm, I realized I could alter others. Xiang Beifei said. Since stepping into the ancestral Dao realm, he has undergone a qualitative change, gaining a unique understanding of many things. All systems in Jojo were originally a special type of heavenly Dao laws, maintained by the Great Cauldron ancestral artifact of Common Valley. Xiang Beifei's yin and yang source energy is very special, capable of completely simulating a system. Then what does this Dao level mean? Elder Luo asked, puzzled. His previous system level was only SR grade. Dao level is my grade? I also don't quite know how to explain. Xiang Beifei struggled to clarify immediately. At this point, Xiaohei chipped in. Just think of it as a Feifei grade system. Feifei grade system? Elder Luo paused, re-examining his system's capabilities. The leisure system remained the same way to strengthen, but the system shop redemption items had all disappeared, as if they were cut off. The system shop for everyone in Jojo has changed its appearance. I've explained, it's unsafe. Next time I'll handle it all together. Xiang Beifei said. I understand, because of the Dao Palace's Great Cauldron ancestral artifact. Elder Luo nodded slightly, recalling that Xiang Beifei had informed him about what he saw in Common Valley. Those system items controlled by the ancestral artifact of Edge Corner airspace were tinged with the Dao Palace's power, so he didn't snack on seeds during the fight just now. Currently, Elder Luo's leisure value totals 98,754,126. However, he soon discovered that when he extremely allocated leisure value, the system interface's realm changed to Realm, Early Immortal Realm. Elder Luo continued to reallocate points in surprise. This power began climbing upwards. The realm changed again. Realm, Middle Immortal Realm. Realm, Late Immortal Realm. What's going on? Wasn't the system able to bear only the power of late heavenly connection? Elder Luo asked in astonishment. This is the power of the Dao level system. Xiang Beifei said. I've removed the system's limitations. Now controlling Elder Luo's leisure system is not the Great Cauldron ancestral artifact of Common Valley but me. Weren't you born able to control other systems? Why say now? Xiaohei chuckled. Just think of Feifei as an ancestral artifact too. A human-shaped ancestral artifact. The ability is similar to the Great Cauldron of Common Valley, so under Feifei's help, you can at least extend to late immortal realm. Even early inquiring Dao isn't a problem. It's like that, but I don't suggest using early inquiring Dao in the future. Apart from me, generally no one can resist the heavenly Dao laws of the Great Desolate Realm. If it's at the Edge Corner airspace, then it doesn't matter. Xiang Beifei said. In that case, doesn't it mean I can already handle those people sent by the Tao Palace? Elder Luo brightened. People from the Tao Palace lack the yin and yang source energy capability, at most exhibiting late heavenly connection strength in the Great Desolate Realm, or they'll be erased. But Elder Luo now has no limitations. Even if the Tao Palace brings in a heap of immortal realm cultivators for sacrifice, he can completely handle it. Yes. Xiang Beifei gave a definite reply. Relieved, Elder Luo soon thought of something again, raising his hand to flick Xiang Beifei's forehead once more. You flicked the forehead of the world's peak ancestral Tao realm, making yourself unbearably impressive, leisure value plus 66,666. Ha ha ha. Effective, effective. Thud. He raised his hand again and knocked Xiang Beifei on the head. You knocked on the head of the world's peak ancestral Tao realm. The sound was impressive, leisure value plus 666. Thud. He struck once more. Damn. Can't you change the way you complete tasks? Xiang Beifei couldn't help but protest. Who's making you worry me for 10 years? Enough talk, without knocking you won't learn. Elder Luo raised his hand again. Thud. Xiang Beifei stared blankly at the idle old man. His head was already numbed by the knocking and he was too lazy to dodge. He yawned, now just a tool without feelings, solely existing for Elder Luo to knock for strength. Qian Qingba, standing nearby, saw Xiang Beifei yawning and getting knocked on the head several times without saying anything. His eyelids twitched as he watched. This was the Human King's Xiang Beifei. Currently, Xiang Beifei is the most powerful human race expert in the ancestral Tao realm, even capable of matching the Tao Palace. When he killed earlier, he didn't even blink, like a cold god of death. Yet, such a terrifyingly powerful person obediently took a beating in front of Elder Luo. Indeed, one thing restrains another. Probably only his master can suppress Xiang Beifei in this world. However, he also understands that the master and disciple have similar personalities. When Elder Luo is serious, he is very intimidating, but when he's idle, he's genuinely idle. After all, the master and disciple don't seem to think like ordinary people. Of course, Elder Luo didn't hit him many times because having done too many similar system tasks, it didn't add any system value. He didn't continue hitting anyway. Even though his disciple had thick skin, he was still his disciple. Qian Qingba was still suppressing Taoist Ranjin over there and asked, "By the way, what about Taoist Ranjin? He's been controlled." Xiang Beifei turned his head, checked Taoist Ranjin's injuries, and frowned. He has a very strong force of heavenly Tao laws in him, and that force is controlling him. Can it be removed to restore him to normal? The force of heavenly Tao laws can only be removed by a corresponding ancestor artifact. Weren't you able to counter the heavenly Tao laws of the Great Desolate Realm? Elder Luo asked. The heavenly Tao laws of the Great Desolate Realm destroy the soul. They directly attack the soul, tearing it apart to kill the opponent, so I just have to disguise myself, but other heavenly Tao laws aren't like that. They have a powerful binding ability. Xiang Beifei explained. So there's no way? Qian Qingba looked at Taoist Ranjin reluctantly. He was once friends with Taoist Ranjin, and seeing him like this now, he felt worried. I'll go to the Tao Palace in the future and get that ancestor artifact. Xiang Beifei said. That's the only way. By the way, Taoist Qingda's condition is also abnormal. Qian Qingba briefly explained the situation. Upon hearing this, Xiang Beifei didn't hesitate and immediately rushed back to Jizhou. Jizhou borderline. Xiang Qingda lay on the bed, eyes tightly closed, looking extremely haggard. His soul was also torn, even more severely than Elder Luo and Qian Qingba. Xiang Beifei had already recovered him, but he still hadn't woken up. Xiang Beifei discovered a serious problem. Grandfather has a strong remnant of heavenly Tao laws, which are binding his soul, causing him extreme pain and preventing his recovery. Is this the remnant of the forces left by Common Valley back then? Xiaohe asked in surprise. Xiang Beifei nodded slightly. It should be. Back at Common Valley, Grandfather fought against over a dozen ancestral Tao realm experts, both relying on ancestor artifacts to fight. The heavenly Tao laws of these artifacts are extremely terrifying, and he must have been wounded by the ancestor artifacts. These injuries can't be healed by Xiang Beifei's return to the original state alone, as the power of the heavenly Tao laws is very strong. It was only now that Xiang Beifei understood why grandfather had become amnesiac over the years. With his strength, without the influence of the ancestor artifact's heavenly Tao power, he wouldn't have fallen to this extent. Xiao Sheng, standing nearby, said gloomily, "It's my fault. I couldn't protect him." He had been taking care of Xiang Qingde all along, his heart filled with guilt. "It's not your fault. I should thank you for looking after him," Xiang Beifei said. Then, he noticed the cracks in Xiao Sheng's system and asked, "Your system is shattered? How did you know?" Xiao Sheng raised his head, frowning. Xiang Beifei looked at Xiao Sheng's system, then sent out a wave of yin and yang energy, covering Xiao Sheng's system, and began to reshape his system. Merely moments later, his system interface had changed. Taoist, Xiao Sheng, Tao level, integration system, realm, late heavenly connection. Xiao Sheng looked at his system in shock, then stared at Xiang Beifei and asked, "How did you do that?" "It's hard to explain. Just think that I can control the system," Xiang Beifei said. Xiao Sheng was clearly surprised. "I understand now." He didn't ask further, because Xiang Beifei was never an ordinary person. "Can I use that power?" Xiao Sheng recalled the strength of Su Qiyuan and Hu Judi, thinking that if he could have used that power beyond the heavenly connection realm, he could have protected the old man from danger. "You can give it a try." Xiang Beifei slightly nodded. Xiao Sheng focused on his system, and then suddenly unleashed a powerful aura. Early Eternal Realm. He had just stepped into the late heavenly connection realm, so early eternal realm was his limit. Unlike Elder Luo, who had been suppressed by the system for over a century and, upon removing the suppression, could surge beyond the inquiring Tao stage. "Zhuzhou's defense line needs construction. You go help them first. It's a good chance to familiarize yourself with your ability," Xiang Beifei said. "All right." Xiao Sheng left the room. Xiang Beifei lowered his head and continued to check his grandfather's injuries. He tried to use his yin and yang energy to counter the heavenly Tao laws imprinted on his grandfather's soul, but the heavenly Tao power was still very strong, making it difficult to remove. No one could clarify what kind of power these heavenly Tao laws were, because the source couldn't be determined, and with his grandfather unconscious, he couldn't explain. Trying to disguise it with yin and yang energy was also unfeasible. "Father Pu, is there any way to save my grandfather?" Xiang Beifei turned his head and asked. In the corner of the room, the shadow of the old giant spirit appeared at some point. Feng and Zhai Kong were also there. They were considered attendants and guards of the old giant spirit, protecting him. The old giant spirit came with Xiang Beifei only because he heard about Taoist Qingde's situation and wanted to meet this old friend. Back then, Taoist Qingde helped the giant spirit race escape the bitter sea. But the old giant spirit never knew where Taoist Qingde went. The great desolate realm is vast, and without guidance, it's impossible to find him. The old giant spirit has cultivated to an extremely high realm, almost invincible, understanding many of the heavenly Tao laws. These heavenly powers find it difficult to kill him. The heavenly powers of the great desolate realm place no restriction on him. The only power capable of killing him is the giant spirit Tao among the heavenly Tao laws. The ancestral artifact sealing the giant spirit Tao was taken by the Tao Palace. So even though the powers of the great desolate realm don't affect him, he has to use the Tao Sheath method to walk here. The old giant spirit carefully examined the injuries on Taoist Qingde, pondering for a long time before saying, "His spirit has suffered injuries from the powers of 28 heavenly Tao laws, yet it hasn't collapsed. Truly remarkable. 28 heavenly Tao laws. The powers of the heavenly Tao laws are extremely terrifying. Not everyone is born as tough-skinned as the giant spirit race. Sometimes, a single heavenly Tao law could wipe out a master." Xiang Beifei also didn't expect the situation to be this severe. He must have relied on his own cultivation to keep his spirit in a specific balanced state, suppressing those heavenly powers. But due to using eternal life power, he was attacked by the heavenly powers of the great desolate realm, leading to an inability to suppress them. The balance of his spirit was broken, and the remaining heavenly powers on his spirit further eroded, which caused more severe injuries, leading to his coma. The old giant spirit analyzed, expressing his views. Do you recognize the heavenly Tao laws on his spirit, senior? Xiang Beifei asked. After all, the old giant spirit was a monster who lived for hundreds of thousands of years, with insights and experience unattainable by ordinary people. So how do we clear them? Xiang Beifei asked. The old giant spirit replied. With 28 heavenly powers, even if it were me, I could only resist them head-on. I can't help others resolve it. You either rely on the corresponding ancestral artifacts or use opposing heavenly powers to counter them. Senior, just tell me what these heavenly powers each are, and then I'll think about how to handle them. Xiang Beifei had witnessed fewer heavenly powers than the old giant spirit. The old giant spirit carefully investigated for a long time, explaining as he surveyed. There are some powers I'm unclear about. After all, the Tao Palace has collected many ancestral artifacts. I can only tell you what I know. He began listing the scars one by one. The heavenly power in the left arm should belong to the space Tao, which seals space. Part of his spirit has been consumed by space, so there are some irreparable gaps here, which can be attempted to fix with amplified heavenly power. The power on the shoulder should be the memory Tao. The memory rules are very peculiar, allowing people to modify their memory or even forget certain abilities. For example, if the power lands on the arm, you might forget what the arm is for. In other words, it makes the body forget there's a part called the arm, rendering this arm useless. Xiang Beifei exclaimed, Memory Tao? Is this why my grandfather has amnesia? The old giant spirit nodded slightly. Probably the power landed only on his shoulder, but it was likely not making him forget his shoulder. Instead, it affected his memory. The memory Tao can be executed in various ways. I think after the Tao Palace acquired the forgetting ancestral artifact, they wanted to modify his memory to make him loyal to the Tao Palace. But it didn't succeed, only making him forget a lot. Just like Jiaoluoluo. He had his memory modified, Xiaohe said. To recover, they would need to reclaim the memory ancestral artifact. The old giant spirit continued to analyze the 28 powers for Xiang Beifei, but even with his vast knowledge, he could only identify the traces left by 20 heavenly Tao laws, with some still uncertain. This world has countless heavenly Tao laws, and even the well-informed old giant spirit cannot recognize them all. Since the Tao Palace took over the entire Edge Corner airspace, they have seized countless ancestral artifacts. Era interjected boldly. Hey, who cares about these heavenly Tao laws? Anyway, just wipe out the Tao Palace, grab their ancestral artifacts, and reclaim all these powers, right? Xiaohe scratched his chin and said, If just talking could defeat the Tao Palace era, you'd already be invincible in the world, right? Of course. If you can use your mouth, why bother using your hands? Era wagged his tail, not feeling ashamed at all. TSK, the legendary Wufeng, who'd have thought such a powerful person would end up like this. Hai Fuyu, leaning against one side of the wall, remained calm. Back in Common Valley, he also knew Wufeng's might. Without Wufeng moving away the Yu Divine Steel to save the giant spirit race, even he couldn't have recovered. Zhai Kong on the side, gruffly said, Will you die or say something nice? The giant spirit race always held great respect for Wufeng. I was just sighing, Hai Fuyu said. Xiang Beifei turned and asked, Do you have any suggestions? When Wufeng saved the giant spirit race, Father Pu didn't see the battle, but I happened to wake up at that time, so I sensed the battle and know some things, Hai Fuyu said with a calm smile. Like what? Human Tao artifact. Back then, Wufeng fought to protect the human Tao artifact. You should know this, right? I don't know, he lost his memory when he came back, Xiang Beifei said. Oh right. I always thought you knew this, so I never mentioned it. Hai Fuyu continued leisurely. I vaguely remember the human Tao artifact shattered during that battle, and a fragment of it was taken back to Zhuzhou by Wufeng. Honestly, if you want to save him, You just need to take back the human Dao artifact from the Dao Palace and then find that fragment. The old giant spirit nodded. Indeed, finding the human Dao artifact is more reliable to save him than finding other ancestral artifacts. Why? Era asked, puzzled. The old giant spirit said, because Qingda is human. It's rumored that at the beginning of this world's creation, certain heavenly Dao rules emerged first, then creating races. The human race was the first to appear, followed by our giant spirit race as the second. Our Shenming race was the second, your giant spirit race was the third. Hai Fuyu interjected to correct. Zhai Kong fiercely roared beside them. Our giant spirit race is second, you water clump. Where do you get the nerve to be second? By being able to trap your giant spirit race with my body? Hai Fuyu replied leisurely. Have you no shame? It was the Yu divine steel suppressing us. You were merely used as a container. Want to fight? Zhai Kong rolled up his sleeves and shouted. I stand by my opinion, Hai Fuyu said steadily. The old giant spirit wasn't concerned with their bickering and continued. The human Dao artifact is very powerful, arguably one of the world's most potent heavenly Dao laws. The human race is the firstborn race, and all subsequent races are based on humans. This is why all races, when cultivated to the end, transform into human-like forms, evolving towards the human race's appearance. Hence, the human Dao is an exceptionally powerful Dao. If you find the human Dao artifact, you can forcibly remove the injuries on his spirit. The human Dao artifact, after all, protects its own race. Of course, if you obtain the human Dao artifact, your odds against the Dao Palace will increase by 1/10. Human Dao artifact. What does it look like? Xiang Beifei asked. That I don't know, I was thinking whether he left a fragment of the human Dao artifact for you, the old giant spirit said. Leave the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment to me? Xiang Beifei furrowed his brows. He didn't have much impression. Ever since Grandpa returned to Jojo, he had no memory. Things were placed haphazardly. The broken sword without edge, this ancestral artifact, was thrown in the kitchen as a vegetable knife. A brick almost got tossed away casually. Who knows where he eventually threw the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment. Ancestral artifact fragments are the hardest to find because when incomplete, they are just ordinary objects, without spiritual power flowing through. It could be a piece of scrap iron, a stone, a withered wood branch. Even if kicked, no one would take it seriously. This piece of land in Juzhou, compared to the Great Desolate Realm and the Edge Corner airspace, is just a small dot, but for humans it is quite vast. Searching inch by inch is unrealistic, and even searching won't likely reveal what it is. Unless you know what the fragment looks like. Xiaohei asked, are we sure it's in Jojo? The Dao Palace should control the human Dao ancestral artifact, and the fragment is definitely in Juzhou. I think they've sent people to lurk in Juzhou just to find this human Dao ancestral artifact fragment, because there is a perception between ancestral artifacts, otherwise they wouldn't go through such trouble. Said the elder giant spirit. The human Dao ancestral artifact is very important, because it determines whether the human race can exist in this world. The Dao Palace has currently obtained the human Dao ancestral artifact. Fortunately, it's only incomplete, but if they manage to get the complete human Dao ancestral artifact, the Dao Palace won't even need to actively attack Juzhou. By relying on the human Dao ancestral artifact, they could wipe out all the humans in this world. By that time, the human race might end up like the giant spirit race, getting erased from this world. Moreover, humans might not have the luck of the giant spirit race, because that small land at Bone Mountain Desert Stone Cave can't accommodate as many humans as Juzhou. So finding the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment is crucial for the Dao Palace. Meanwhile, Xiang Beifei still cannot venture solo into someone's territory to retrieve the human Dao ancestral artifact. He must find the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment before the Dao Palace and protect it. Xiang Beifei carefully pondered, but still couldn't recall anything at home that he might have overlooked. Father Pu, you have rich experience. Could you come to my house to check? Maybe there's something Grandpa left behind that I overlooked, Xiang Beifei asked. Sure. The elder giant spirit nodded slightly. Xiang Beifei immediately took Grandpa and headed to the inland of Juzhou, returning to his home. After taking care of Grandpa, He looked around at the home he hadn't returned to in 10 years. His home was an ordinary 3-bedroom apartment. It was very tidy, everything in order, showing that Grandpa often cleaned. Even Xiang Beifei's bedroom, the bedspread was neatly folded, wafting a sun-dried scent like it had just been aired yesterday. The trinkets on the desk and the books in the bookshelf had no dust. The windows were half open, letting the breeze flow through the room. Looking at his clean room, Xiang Beifei felt a warmth in his heart, but also guilt. Perhaps Grandpa was always waiting for his grandson to suddenly return one day. Hence he cleaned Xiang Beifei's room every day, so Xiang Beifei could stay any time he returned. 10 years consistently. Father Pu, please help look and see if there's anything left behind, Xiang Beifei said. All right. The group began rummaging through the room, not leaving out even cups, pots and pans, or the stuff propping up table legs. Ancestral artifact fragments are often inconspicuous, not reactant to spiritual power, but they have a very special characteristic: hardness. Normally, without the power of the ancestral Tao realm, it's hard to break an ancestral artifact fragment. Era and Yumong enthusiastically helped in the search. Half an hour later, they excitedly pulled out a hard black stone from the wall crevice outside the balcony, thumb-sized, saying it was strange how they couldn't crush it. You two dummies, have you never seen ghost-headed cockroach egg cases? Xiaohe rolled his eyes. Really? Are cockroach egg cases like this? Never seen them, Era asked, perplexed. This is a mutant ghost-headed cockroach egg case. The shell is hard. It's a kind of mutant desolate beast from the desolate realm. Likely from a neighbor's home, as no insects would crawl into this house, it has formations, Xiaohe said. The place where Xiang Qingde lived was well protected with various formations by Elder Luo. With Xiao Sheng's care, no desolate beast or insect would intrude. Wonder what it tastes like roasted? Era stared at the egg case, lost in thought. Ever since he got those skeleton race flames, he kept thinking about roasting things. The group searched throughout the night, almost turning the house upside down. But still, they hadn't found anything that seemed like an ancestral artifact fragment. However, it seemed the elder giant spirit and the three of them were drawn to the oddly shaped household appliances. Although the giant spirit race is very large, their living conditions are still quite primitive. They don't have such rich creativity. Even a TV that plays news amazes them. Yumong, too, was attracted to the cartoons. Yumong had heard Xiang Beifei and Xiaohe talk about the wonders of Juzhou. Seeing is believing. After learning to use the remote, Yumong found the animation channel, where the TV was playing Hui Yangyang and Shi Tailang, making Yumong's eyes shine. Eventually, Feng and Zhai Kong were also drawn in, the three squeezing onto the sofa, eyes fixed on the TV, captivated, forgetting their task of searching for things. The old giant spirit walked out of the bathroom and asked Xiang Beifei, "Do you mind if I wander around Juzhou?" "Don't worry, I mean no harm, I just want to see how he built Juzhou. Human creativity is very strong. Perhaps I can also use it to create my own home. Of course, I'll also take a look at the whereabouts of the human Tao ancestral artifact fragments." The old giant spirit admired human creativity, often tinkering with household appliances for a long time, even finding an electronic watch fascinating. Earlier, the old giant spirit was squatting in the bathroom, meticulously studying the structure of the flush toilet. Xiang Beifei was momentarily unsure whether the old giant spirit was there to help him find the human Tao ancestral artifact fragment or to study the toilet. All right. Xiang Beifei rubbed his forehead, feeling like relying on these three giant spirits to find something was somewhat unreliable. However, he didn't have high hopes from the start, as the likelihood of the human Tao ancestral artifact fragment being at home was not large. If it were him, he would certainly choose a relatively special place for protection. But considering how Grandpa Xiang used the broken woofing sword as a kitchen knife and threw a brick into the trash can, having no memory of the ancestral artifact whatsoever, Xiang Beifei was also unable to determine how that human Tao ancestral artifact fragment might be handled. It's possible that it might be thrown into some garbage pile right now. Juzhou disposes of garbage by directly dumping it into the Great Desolate Realm. If it falls into the Great Desolate Realm, it's even more troublesome because the Tao Palace holds the main body of the human Tao ancestral artifact, and they can use it to locate the ancestral artifact fragments. Feng and Jai Kong reluctantly tore their attention away from the cartoons and followed the old giant spirit for shopping while Haifu yawned, showing little interest in these matters, and went back to the Yu Divine Steel to sleep. Xiaohei stroked his chin, saying, Fei, do you think Grandpa Xiang might have put the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment in the Spirit Gathering Book? Isn't it one of the 28 constellations? Do you think the Spirit Gathering Book came from my grandpa? Besides, you came out of the Spirit Gathering Book yourself, don't you remember? Xiang Beifei asked. No impression. Could it be that I've lost memory too, affected by the amnesiac heavenly Dao? Xiaohei wondered. How would I know? Xiang Beifei couldn't fully determine how Xiaohei came to be, but he remembers that the brick came out of the Spirit Gathering Book. The breath soil used to resist the Dao Palace also came from it, along with many other fragmented items. For example, the ancestral artifact fragment controlling the systems of everyone in Juzhou, the fragment of the Dao Palace's Lydian spear, the fragment of the string, and even the human race's sealed mustard seed and palm heavenly Dao laws are all in the Spirit Gathering Book. The Spirit Gathering Book seems to be a divine object specifically meant to guide him. Its power even surpasses many ancestral artifacts, like how the Dao Palace once sealed the mustard seed and palm heavenly Dao laws, making it impossible to exist in this world, yet it managed to preserve the mustard seed. Of course, some heavenly Dao powers are unusual too, because the giant spirit race was also erased from this world by the Dao Palace, prohibited from existing, but they managed to survive with the formations of the Bone Mountain Desert Stone Cave. Xiaohei said, By the way, we still have 5 constellations whose seals haven't been broken. Should we check them out? After entering the ancestral Dao realm, Xiang Beifei didn't handle the constellation matters and hurried to the Juzhou side, leaving the remaining constellations unsealed until now. All right, let's give it a try. Xiang Beifei nodded slightly. There are still 5 constellations in the Spirit Gathering Book. Willow Constellation, Star Constellation, Zhang Constellation, Wing Constellation, and Chun Constellation. The first 3 constellations require the Ascension Realm, the latter ones the Ancestral Dao Realm to unseal. Actually, there are 2 more constellations before them, Well Constellation and Ghost Constellation. Inside these 2 are sealed 2 legs of the Big Cauldron ancestral artifact, which Xiang Beifei confirmed back in Common Valley. Luckily, they aren't lacking spiritual power crystals at the moment. After running for so long, they mostly gathered the corresponding spiritual power crystals, and then unsealed the remaining seals. Willow Constellation sealed a twisted piece of bronze with some patterns, but no detailed markings or explanations. Star Constellation sealed half a smooth jade with circles of carvings around it, seemingly broken off from somewhere, yet the Spirit Gathering Book still provided no hints. Damn! Are these 2 things another ancestral artifact fragment? Xiaohei held the bronze piece in his left hand, the smooth jade in his right, tapping them together. The objects emitted a dull sound, yet showed no spiritual power fluctuation or reaction to spiritual power. Why are they all ancestral artifact fragments? Can't something complete be sealed? Era asked in confusion. How would I know? Maybe the battles back then were too fierce. A lot of ancestral artifacts got shattered, and someone gathered a bunch of fragments and tossed them into the Spirit Gathering Book for future use. Xiaohei speculated. At least provide a user manual. Without saying what ancestral artifact this is, who knows how to use it? Era pouted. Perhaps the guy who created the Spirit Gathering Book was just lazy, Xiaohei guessed. Are they really ancestral artifact fragments? Fei, check them out. Xiang Beifei examined these 2 items carefully. The fragments were very hard. With his current ability, he couldn't break them. I can only exert the power of the Inquiring Dao phase now, can't break it, Xiang Beifei said. However, based on his experience with ancestral artifacts, these 2 things were indeed very likely to be ancestral artifact fragments. Could it be that one of them happens to be the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment? Xiaohei asked. Yeah, given that Grandpa Feifei's brick was sealed in the Spirit Gathering Book, it's possible the human Dao ancestral artifact fragment is there too, saving us a lot of fuss, Era said enthusiastically. But upon thinking about it, the timelines don't match since Grandpa lost his memory in Common Valley more than 40 years ago, and I only got the Spirit Gathering book in the past decade. If Grandpa really wanted to leave me the Human Tao ancestral artifact fragment, why aren't the broken Wufeng and another brick placed in the Spirit Gathering book? Originally, one brick was sealed in Xiang Beifei's Spirit Gathering book, but Grandpa also had one, which doesn't make sense. Never mind. Let's see what Zhang Constellation has. Xiaohe took out a pile of spiritual power crystals and threw them onto the Spirit Gathering book. The Spirit Gathering book flashed a light. Zhang Constellation was a banner. Finally something that's not broken copper and iron, Era exclaimed excitedly. Recently, they've been unsealing a pile of fragments, which was disappointing for them, but now they finally saw a complete item. However, just as Zhang Constellation was unsealed, a burst of powerful murderous aura erupted from it. It was extremely chilling, seemingly gathered from years of slaughter. The killing aura spewed from the banner, transforming into a sinister murderous intent, sweeping towards Xiang Beifei, who frowned slightly and immediately retreated. The strength of this killing aura was extremely overbearing, surprisingly at the late Ascension realm. Oh no, we can't handle it, Xiaohe shouted. Xiang Beifei could not exert the late Ascension realm power in the Great Desolate Realm and couldn't deal with this strength. Many things sealed in the Spirit Gathering book weren't ordinary. For example, Era, before being tamed, always wanted to pinch Xiang Beifei, and was very fierce. The banner in front of them apparently was similar. Because the things in the previous constellations were lifeless, they eased their vigilance, forgetting about this. Just then, a vibration came from the void, followed by a force that suddenly charged towards the banner. Bang! The banner was struck by the heavenly Tao force. Crack! The banner immediately broke into pieces. The murderous aura instantly became sluggish, like a deflated ball. Seeing this, Xiaohe quickly threw it back into the constellation within the Spirit Gathering book. Fortunately, the heavenly Tao laws of the Great Desolate Realm are not just for show. Xiaohe quickly closed the Spirit Gathering book. The Great Desolate Realm does not allow any power stronger than the Heavenly Connection phase to appear. The murderous aura of the banner was initially overbearing in attack, but it got subdued by the heavenly Tao laws of the Great Desolate Realm. Wasn't it broken just now? Era asked. Xiang Beifei and Xiaohe exchanged glances, somewhat helplessly. They haven't even had the chance to understand the purpose of the banner, but it was smashed by the heavenly Tao of the Great Desolate Realm, which was quite unfortunate. It might be an ancestral artifact as well? Maybe it can be restored. Xiaohe blinked. Xiang Beifei rubbed his forehead, feeling a bit headache.